personal coach through every stage of your research project, from ideation to final assessment.
And the best part, it's absolutely free.
Visit us at philscihub.com and be part of this learning journey.
Welcome to PhilSci-Hub Research University, your ultimate guide on your next research project.
We will lay down the best practices in research ideation, literature review, experimental design, and data analysis to guide you as you carry out your research project. Learn from the PhilSci-Hub team of research scientists and some invited subject matter experts. PhilSci-Hub Research University will be your personal coach through every stage of your research project, from ideation to final assessment.
And the best part, it's absolutely free.
Visit us at philscihub.com and be part of this learning journey.
Let's learn and succeed together here at PhilSci-Hub Research University.
Mabuhay! Welcome to the Filipino Science Hub. Thank you for your continued support to this online platform. To our new participants, thank you for checking us out today, and we would like to officially welcome you to the PhilSci-Hub family. Before we start the webinar, I would like to share some house rules in order to facilitate a smooth session. For our Zoom participants, we would appreciate it if you could turn your audio and video cameras off during the webinar. If you have questions or comments, feel free to type them on our Zoom chat box or YouTube live comments, and we will try to accommodate as much questions as possible. After the talk, we will have a 30-minute Q&A where the Zoom participants will have the opportunity to ask their questions live. For those who would like to receive a certificate of participation, a Google form link will be posted on our Zoom chat box, YouTube live comments, and YouTube video description towards the end of the webinar. Again, welcome to all our Zoom participants and YouTube live viewers. For those who are new and may not be familiar with who we are and what we do, allow me to share our mission and vision in the next few minutes. Filipino Science Hub is an online platform founded by our CEO, Filipino scientist, Dr. Jeffrey Camacho Bonquin, back in 2012. Currently, we are a registered nonprofit organization based in Houston, Texas, United States. Our mission is to promote STEM education and the culture of research among students and teachers in the Philippines and abroad. Our current global leadership team is comprised of volunteer Filipino scientists, seasoned STEM educators, and business executives across the globe. Our vision is to see a technology and innovation-driven Philippines, and we believe that this can be achieved by creating a new generation of well-rounded Filipino STEM enthusiasts. The vision is being carried out by our two major programs, the PhilSci-Hub Ed program and the PhilSci-Hub Research University. Through PhilSci-Hub Ed, we are able to empower and support our teachers by strengthening STEM fundamentals education. We believe that this is important because the more equipped our STEM educators are, the more they can inspire students to pursue a career in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The other major program that drives our vision forward is PhilSci-Hub Research University. This is where we provide tools for fundamentals of research and bring practicing scientists closer to the educational sector. Our official website is www.philscihub.com. This is where you can access all our materials such as webinars, tutorials, modules, virtual lab, and features, all of which are free. We are also present in several social media platforms, so follow us wherever you are most active on to get updated with our web events. Again, thank you for being with us this morning. To officially start our webinar, I would like to turn the virtual floor over to our host today.
Okay, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.
Good morning, Doc Jeff.
Ayan, good morning.
Good morning.
So we are joined by my partner in crime, JP Onya, all the way from Finland. Napakaaga po sa kanya dyan. And we're also joined by Dr. Connie Hibas, a Filipina clinical mycologist based in San Antonio, Texas. So ako po si Jeffrey Bunkin, founder of Filipino Science Hub, and magsasama-sama po tayo ngayong araw na ito. Alright, so kamusta naman po kayong lahat? Pwede po namin malaman kung saan po nanggaling ang ating mga participants ngayong araw na ito?
Comment in the chat box.
Apo, ayan. Sang sulok po ng Pilipinas tayo nang
I'm
galing.
seeing Benguet, Palawan, Sorsogon. So,
Ayan. And then mga group, ay ang dami. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagsama.
babahain na naman yung chat box natin.
Oo, babahain na naman. Pero na-miss natin to. Medyo matagal-tagal po kami hindi nagkaroon ng session for Filipino Science and Research University. Pero nagbabalik po tayo. Ayan. Dr. Hibas, kamusta po kayo dyan sa San Antonio?
Hello, Tita Pons. Nakamute ka, Tita.
You're on mute po, Mama.
Klase, hindi ko kayo gandira.
Medyo lumalamig na dito.
Is it getting close to Canadian cold temperature, Mama Connie?
Next week.
Oh, next week. All right.
We will have a cold spell.
Ayan, medyo dito fall na po dito sa Amerika. And then I bet si JP po kasi is nasa
It's proper winter now.
nasa Finland, malapit siya sa North Pole. So, ayan, medyo ginaw season na siguro. May snow na ba dyan, JP?
Yeah.
Okay, so marami po tayong kasama ngayon.
Nagpapalit na ako ng winter tires.
Oh, yeah. Oo nga. It's needed para sa pagdadrive dyan. So, very important to be safe. So, we have more than 100 participants on Zoom. And then we have some of our folks who are watching through YouTube live streaming. So, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Alright, so allow me to share my screen first. Ayan. So, to formally open today's session. So, welcome to Filipino Science Hub Research University's new webinar series. Ngayon po, medyo targeted ang audience natin para sa ating mga research training programs. Ito po ang kauna-unahan naming research training course na ang focus po namin ay para sa ating mga guro.
Teachers.
Yeah, teacher. So we titled the training course Research Essential Skills. Again, para sa mga guro. Kasi ang gusto po natin talaga dito is mahasa ang ating mga guro sa kung paano ba ang effective na pag-mentor ng mga estudyante as a research advisor. And ang focus po talaga natin bilang mga guro is to develop the skills of our students as they perform scientific research at the basic education level. So siguro po magtanong nga lang din po tayo sa mga guro po na nandito po sa ating session ngayon. Sino po sa inyo ang nasa elementary? Sino po sa inyo paano ba natin 'to gagawin?
Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up po. Pa-thumbs up nga po. Medyo ang tagal nating nawala dito sa ganito. So hindi na. Pa-thumbs up nga po ng mga guro po sa elementary school level. Meron po ba? Ay, meron isa. High school. How about high school po? Sino po
High school.
sa high school level? Oh, madami. Ay, pumapalo. Oh, mukhang majority ng ating mga...
Edson.
Ayan. Well, thank you so much for participating po. How about college level po? Sino po sa inyo dito ang nasa college level? Meron ba? Oy, merong isa si Sir Vincent Sebreros. And then, so meron po ba dito mga estudyante? Ayan. Ang mga estudyante po, welcome rin kayo rito. But then, we also like focus sessions later on.
Yeah, we have a dedicated session for students.
Yeah, meron tayong for high school and meron din tayo para sa college student. So para ang experience po kasi namin ni JP. By the way, Mr. JP Onya, si JP po, siya ang head ng Filipino Science Hub Research University.
Yes.
And back in the years 2020 and 2021,
Pandemic
nag-roll out
years.
po- yes, pandemic years, nag-roll out po kami ng research training program, essentially laymanizing or pinapasimple yung research process from the perspective of Filipino scientists. Yan, si Mama Connie, she delivered a talk on conference presentations.
Mhm.
So, nandun po yun sa YouTube channel namin. But then
Yeah.
yung approach po kasi namin nun halo-halo.
Mhm.
So this time around, magfo-focus kami sa isang audience, mainly because yung konteksto ng pag-perform ng research para sa isang research advisor ay iba sa kung paano ba siya may experience ng mga estudyante sa high school level at lalong-lalo na, iba yung experience when you are performing research at the college level. Ayan. And by the way, before po tayo mag-proceed, we would also like to thank the Batangas City Santo Niño Devotees Association of North California
Our sponsors.
that they sponsored this project. So meron po tayong mga kababayan sa Bay Area, sa San Francisco. They're part of this organization who has a very long history of charitable work para po sa ating mga kababayan. So hindi po sila nakakalimot. So
Thank
pasalamatan
you
po natin.
po.
Alright. Okay. Moving on, magpapakilala lang din po ako kasi baka po hindi kayo pamilyar. So ako po si Jeffrey Bunkin. I'm the founder of Filipino Science Hub. I'm a chemistry graduate from UP Los Baños. I took up a PhD degree in chemistry at the University of Alberta in Canada, where I met Dr. Hibas, who's with us at Filipino Science Hub. So since 2009 po, nung pumasok ako ng grad school, I have been involved in all sorts of research and development work. So medyo 15 taon na po akong involved dito. Ito po naman pinapakita lang natin para po ma-assure kayo na medyo may paghuhugutan naman po yung matututunan nyo ngayong araw na ito. Pero we want for this to be very informal. Gusto po namin interactive kasi ang gusto po kasi namin dito ay hindi lang po kayo ang may mapulot sa amin. Gusto rin po namin may mapulot kami sa inyo. So pag nagtanong po kami about your experience, so sana po makiparticipate kayo and wag po kayong mahiya magtanong sa amin. Hindi po kami nangangagat. So over the course of time, I have published more than 16 papers in various internationally peer-reviewed journals. I have more than 25 inventions. So yun po, medyo mahaba-haba na din po ang aking nilakaran sa area of research and development. And just to give you just like an overview of my experience, yun pong experience ko sa research and development has navigated the academic, government, and industry research trisector. So medyo naikutan ko na po yan. So medyo marami po tayong baon from that perspective. So sa ngayon po, I am hindi ko na alam kung ano itatawag ko sa sarili ko. Technically, I'm not practicing as a scientist right now, but what I do is I am leading technology commercialization and development programs in major energy company. So ang ginagawa ko na po ngayon is innovation leadership. So ako na po ang medyo what they call this, I'm herding all the scientists for them to do what they do. So
yeah, it's a research and a different context.
Yeah. So essentially ako po ang nambubudol sa mga scientists para gawin nila yung nila. Ayan. Tapos sa inyo, informal tayo, gagamit tayo ng salitang kalye dito. Alright.
Budol talaga.
Yan. By the way, I would also like to ask, kasi nagtatagalog po ako dito, do we have anyone in the audience who doesn't speak English para po at least alam namin and we can adjust the language then accordingly?
Who doesn't speak Tagalog?
Yeah. Does anyone here not speak Tagalog? Okay. All right. So we would also count on you to speak up if you don't understand some of the things that we're doing. All right. To get started, ang ginawa ko po dito sa part ko, I am covering the first couple of topics in this training course. 2 araw po ito. We hope that you can still join us tomorrow. But then, before po tayo mag-discuss ng research, magtatanong po muna ako sa ating mga guro, sa ating participants. Sino po sa inyo, who among you understands or is confident of their understanding of the terms scientific inquiry, scientific research, scientific method, and research and development. Makikitaas nga po ng kamay kung sino po dito sa atin ang confident sa pagkakaintindi niya ng mga terms na yan. Meron po ba? Meron po ba sa atin? Ayan, si Sir Alexis Bayan. Okay. So, meron pa po bang iba? Okay, so mukhang majority ng ating audience members medyo hindi ganun ka-confident or komportable siguro. And wala pong masama dyan. Ako po, sa totoo lang po, aaminin ko sa inyo, nakatapos ako ng PhD lahat. Ginawa ko yan ng mga yan. So mag-mute muna po tayo ng ating mga na-unmute na participants. Yung exact definitions of all of this, I would admit to all of you, years after I finished my PhD, saka lang po siya naging klaro sa akin when I got more involved in my research and development practice. So kaya ko po ito sinisimulang i-present sa inyo is for us to really be able to train our students in practicing the scientific method and applying it in the conduct of research, and more broadly, practice scientific inquiry. It is very important that we have a clear understanding of these terms and kung bakit po ba yung ibang elements na yan nakapaloob sa itinuturo nyo sa high school at sa college. Hindi lang po yan basta sumulpot sa textbook na first lesson, scientific method. Okay po ba yon? Alright, and by the way, if in the middle of my talk, I say something that doesn't make sense, please feel free to also ask questions sa group chat or raise your hand and we'll acknowledge it. Kasi we have a fairly rich content today. It is very important that we address your questions before po mag-build up ang ating kumbaga hindi natin naiintindihan or yung ikinakalito natin. Okay po ba?
Yeah, and Doc Jeff, we have configured this webinar in parts. So parang after ng part mo, we will have a Q&A.
Yep.
And then I go with my own part of this talk, and then another Q&A for my.
And actually JP, ang ginawa ko, yung mga subtopics, I would dedicate siguro 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A before ako magtuloy-tuloy. So ang pakiusap lang po namin sa inyo is wag po kayong mahiyang magtanong.
Yes.
All right.
So just type in your questions on the chat box and then we can ask the questions for you kung medyo intimidated pa tayo. Yeah.
Yes, JP, makiki-monitor. Kasi hindi ko sila mapansin. All right. So, okay, let's start with scientific inquiry. Okay, so what is scientific inquiry? So as defined on this slide, so scientific inquiry, it encompasses the entire spectrum of questioning, exploring, and seeking answers about the world around us. So ito pong, yung scientific inquiry po, it is the practice of trying to understand the world around you. And it covers all the activities, yung posing questions, pag-explore, paghahanap ng sagot at explanation. And broadly speaking, it can be a very informal activity. Pwedeng nagtanong ka lang or pwedeng nag-observe ka lang. That's part of scientific inquiry. However, yun po kasing scientific inquiry which actually stems out of our natural curiosity. It serves as the foundation upon which we developed what we call scientific research and most importantly, the scientific method. All right? So broad term po yun. Pag sinabi yung inquiry, it could just be in as far as asking the question or pag-iimbestiga. But then it may not be all that structured. But then yung systematic approach by which we try to understand the world around us is what we call scientific research. So as defined here, it is a systematic study directed towards better understanding or towards better scientific knowledge or understanding of a topic. So I would like to emphasize that a topic. So meaning scientific research, it is an effort focused on a topic. All right? And scientific research is based on a topic that is focused enough and is actionable. So meaning, alam mo kung paano mo sasagutin yung tanong. Okay po ba? Does that make sense? Alright, medyo tahimik ang ating mga members. Alright, and then, oftentimes you will hear people using the term research and development. So yun po bang term na yan ay, what does it really mean? So as I mentioned earlier, research is a systematic process by which we gather scientific knowledge and in the process understand a topic. Yung term po kasi that the development in research and development, it is our use of the knowledge and understanding gained from research. So meaning kung ano yung natutunan mo sa research part, you apply it to come up with solutions, to develop new technologies in the form of materials, devices, systems, and methods that we actually deploy and to solve real-life problems. So ito po, yung development part, yan po yung nagpo-produce ng mga technologies na ginagamit natin ngayon. And then putting together yung term na research and development as it is formally defined, it is the process of performing research activities and using the knowledge from research in development activities. All right. Medyo meron po bang meron po ba dito sa atin na nagkaroon ng kumbaga clarity sa understanding ng scientific inquiry, scientific research, and scientific method from all these definition? Ay wala pa palang scientific method and research and development. So yan po yung pinagkaiba ng mga terms na yan. And then, scientific method. So the scientific method is the most fundamental process in scientific inquiry. So when you are performing scientific research on a topic, typically po, you're not only answering one question. You may be answering several questions. So your process, your systematic method to answer each of those research questions is the scientific method. So that's the reason why yung scientific method, it is the most basic process that we practice under scientific inquiry. And that is the reason why ang kauna-unahang lesson po na tinuturo natin, if I recall it during my time, first year high school was when the scientific method was introduced sa akin through science. So the reason why we start there is we start with the most fundamental process. And as we move along, as we teach our students in the form of experiments, so yun yung mga opportunities para ma-practice nila yung scientific method. So first year, experiments. Towards the end of high school, nagpa-perform sila ng scientific research. That's because meron na pong expectation that as students progress in their programs, nabibuild na yung ability nila or yung comfort nila sa pag-practice ng scientific method. Kaya palaki na ng palaki yung scope na ginagawa nila. Yun po yung natural progression. So I'm hoping po na ngayon naiintindihan nyo na bakit scientific method. It's because yun yung pinakasimpleng process. Habang tumatagal pa sa fourth year, nagre-research na kasi at that time, dapat comfortable na sila, kaya na nilang i-apply yun sa pag-answer ng multiple questions covered in research. Ayan. Meron pong question si Sir Edson Bilocara. How about po yung research extension? Medyo hindi po ako... Pwede niyo po ba, sir, i-define sa akin yung research extension? Medyo hindi po familiar sa akin yung term na yun. Ayan, medyo ito pointed yung ibang questions dito. Okay, siguro i-answer natin mamaya kasi after ng couple of slides meron tayong Q&A. All right. Okay. And then moving on, I would just like to show you this. This is how we summarize it. So again, yung broad practice of asking questions around about our environment or about the world, that is scientific inquiry. The structured process by which we understand a specific topic or by which we answer a set of questions around a topic that is scientific research, and the most basic process is the scientific method. Ayan. And then when we apply the knowledge we gain from scientific research and we develop something, that is how we innovate. So ito po, this is how we map everything out. This is how all of these processes fit together for us to be able to come up with new technologies that would make the country prosperous and that would make society's lives better. Ayan po. And why is it important to perform research and development? So, siguro po yung kontekstong ibibigay ko sa inyo dito is one that should resonate well with most Filipinos. And this is essentially the guidance that the Department of Science and Technology of the Philippines has rolled out. And this is actually in relation to their Science for Change program launched in 2021. And they highlighted here that research and development is vital to the Philippines as it is a means for the country to resolve challenges as a nation. It is a knowledge-driven process by which we come up with solutions and evidence-based answers to our questions and national challenges. So again, from the DOSC's perspective, so as a developing country, ito yung mechanism natin sa pag-solve ng problems. Ayan. And then bakit po ba namin ito ginagawa? Bakit po ba ito ginagawa ng Filipino Science Hub? It is really for the purpose of encouraging more Filipinos, kayo pong mga guro at mga estudyante, to venture into research and development kasi kailangan po yan ng bansa natin. So in 2018, UNESCO rolled out a study and they made a recommendation that for the Philippines to sustain its economic growth, the Philippines needs to have 380 Filipino scientists per million Filipinos. Unfortunately, during that year, we only had 189 per million Filipinos. Hindi pa po tayo nangalahati. During that period as well, our neighboring Southeast Asian countries like Singapore had 6,900 per million population. Malaysia and Thailand had 2,000 and about 1,000 per million of their population. So medyo sobrang napag-iwanan po tayo dito. And sino po ba nagpo-produce ng Filipino scientists? Mga guro po. So kayo po mga guro na naguhulma ng kamalayan at nag-educate sa ating mga estudyante, you are in the possession to produce the scientists of tomorrow. Kaya din po namin ito ginagawa para matulungan po namin kayo sa inyong journey. All right. Okay. So at this point, medyo ikakap ko muna po yan. So that's the definition of scientific inquiry, research and development, and then this is the scientific method and how all of these fit together para po makapag-innovate tayo. So 5-minute Q&A, wag po kayo mahihiya. We will try to answer these questions like to the best of our ability. Ayan.
So I'm seeing here one question from Janice La Vega.
Yep.
So, Doc Jeff, how can we refresh scientific method to our students considering a 2-year gap due to the pandemic and constant changes in educational delivery of lessons? So this is a very tough question.
So this is a very tough question. Siguro po, I would answer it in a couple of, I have 2 answers for this. Siguro po Ma'am Janice, the most straightforward way to reintroduce or to refresh the scientific method sa mga students ay kapag po nagpe-perform sila ng laboratory experiments sa klase. Since medyo nagbalik na po tayo ngayon sa normal mode of education. So when you ask the students to perform the experiments, make it clear that every step in the experiment is technically a step in the scientific method. Yun din po yung dapat klarong-klaro sa atin sa pag-deploy natin ng experiment, lalo pa sa first couple of years ng mga estudyante, that when they come up with a hypothesis, when they design the experiments or the approach, dapat napapaliwanag nyo po that, etong part na to, yung procedure mo, ito yung corresponding step na sa science.
Exactly.
Dapat po klaro yun. And tatanong ko lang po sa ating mga guro, klaro po ba sa inyo na kaya po tayo nagde-deploy nag-implement or nag-administer ng experiment sa science subject sa high school? Yun po talaga ay method para po ma-practice nila yung scientific method. Kasi kung ang understanding po natin ay yung experiment ay requirement lang, medyo baguhin po natin yun. Every experiment that you roll out in class is an opportunity to introduce the scientific method. Kailangan lang po, medyo dagdagan natin ng effort at ng context na this is how this entire process from understanding the problem, designing the experiment, performing the experiment, gathering up the data, analyzing the data, drawing conclusions, and then writing the report. Those are all the steps in the scientific method. Okay, most of science graduates doesn't feel the government support. Contract of service ang employment karamihan sa government. Paano po ba yun? Ito po ba ay konteksto ng mga guro na wala pong masyadong suporta? So siguro po when it comes to this, kung medyo wala po kayong masyadong mga gamit, there are also ways din po. There are, kung ba ngayon naman po maganda yung access ninyo sa information. Siguro po kung hindi tayo makagawa ng actual experiments, baka po pwede natin i-expose ang mga estudyante sa virtual experiments. So we have some of those po sa Filipino Science Hub. There's a bunch of other platforms out there. And then, isa din po ito sa mga tinatrabaho namin ni JP sa Research University. Kaya po namin ito ginagawa. We are really introducing practical research in the most practical way. I will also be very honest. Nung umuwi po ako sa Pilipinas para magbakasyon, I bought books po on practical research na ibinibenta dyan sa atin. Yung pagkakasulat po hindi practical. So mahirap po siyang intindihin. Kaya po ito ginagawa rin po namin nila JP na we are really trying to unpack all these concepts in a way na madali po talagang maiintindihan ng lahat. Kaya po nagsisimula kami sa mga guro. Ayan. I mean, chemists and chemical technicians are most contract of service. Ayan. Okay. So siguro po walang masyadong access sa facilities, ano? And
yeah, sometimes it's a problem din of communication kasi a lot of the government services now are not accessible unless you ask. So siguro kapag minsan if we try to reach out to them, but I hate to say that we have to reach out to them, but because they are they're supposed to give this like freely, but sometimes yung awareness ng mga tao about the government services ay wala. So sometimes we just really have to reach out to them, and well, they will provide as long as there is a like tangible demand from them.
That is actually true. And siguro po tayo din po as a community, whether it be nasa teaching po tayo or nasa science po tayo, it is also very important po that we continue to communicate and connect with our policymakers kasi hindi din po kasi nila maiintindihan kung ano yung mga
Exactly.
natin kung hindi nila alam. So if you're part of a professional organization, for example, like what's Integrated Chemists of the Philippines, for example, I don't know if I recall it correctly, make all of these like known kasi they are the ones who naturally have the connection with policymakers. So siguro po, we just have to make, like our grievances known then. So ayan. Philippines requires more scientists to develop our country. In which specific scientific field po do we need more researchers? Actually po, I think there's a need across all fields. But then if I would make any recommendation, kung ano po yung mga industry na meron po tayo natural resources, then muna po tayo mag-focus. Kulang po tayo ng mga scientists sa area ng agriculture. Unang-una, ay nandyan po yung yaman natin. Sa medical profession po natin yan. Marami po tayo medical professionals, but then I had friends who did MD PhD sa Pilipinas, for example. Kulang rin po tayo ng mga medical professionals na nagpa-perform ng research. Yun din po yung nag-limit kung paano tayo nakaka-come up ng technology na unique sa Pilipinas na magde-develop na sarili nating identity. Ayan po. Actually po, lahat naman ng field po, kailangan din talaga.
Doc Jeff, yung kanina parang hindi natapos yung thought because you said you had two answers to that first question.
Ano sinabi ko?
The first one is
experiments, no?
Experiments.
Kasi hindi ko lang na-acknowledge. Yung second answer to that is virtual. Try to make use of accessible information.
All right.
Ayan. In special science elementary schools, we are also conducting simple experiments. We also teach research, specifically scientific method. So maganda po yan. Siguro well acknowledge a couple more questions para hindi po tayo kulangan sa oras. By the way po, we plan this to go over a course of 3 hours po. So kapag medyo malapit na po yung 12, kumuha na po kayo ng pagkain at merienda nyo kasi kami po ako ni JP ang kasama nyo sa inyong pananghalian. Ayan.
Yes.
Siguro,
And also this is recorded, so we are recording this through the live stream, and if you have missed any information during the webinar, so you can always go back to the recording later.
Ayan. Ayan. One of the challenges I encounter as a new research teacher is to design activities that will help students better understand the scientific method, even with the limited resources in our science lab. So, Ma'am Jenny, the experiment doesn't have to be complex and resource intensive. Actually po, kahit yung simple lang na pag-observe under the microscope, so medyo some shows din yun na may microscope sila, no? So, hindi naman po siya kailangan sobrang complex na experiment. Kahit po home-based, acid-based titration, gamit po kayo ng bicarbonate, gamit po kayo ng suka, for example. Those are opportunities to still
practice
yung experiment, and then ang essence po talaga niyan is himayin niyo po sa estudyante niyo bakit natin ginagawa itong lahat ng step na to and fit it with the scientific method.
Para malinaw para sa kanila.
And ako po sasabihin ko po, nag-aral ako sa Pilipinas, galing po akong barangay high school, hindi po ako nagkaroon ng ganong appreciation na scientific method pala yung ginagawa ko. Yung parang, kapag ang pagtuturo mo na experiment ay you just have to do this because this is required, medyo ang hirap po nun. Ayan.
Wait, ano nga 1 month ago, merong nag-consult sa akin. Sabi, gusto daw nila ng high school project. Sabi ko, ano bang gusto nyong gawin? Hindi nila ma-explain kasi hindi na-explain ng teacher. So, hindi nila ma-explain kung ano ba talaga yung steps ng scientific method.
Yep. Totoo po yan. So, again, yung malaking effort, which is research, it'll break down kapag hindi klaro ang scientific method. Ayan po. Alam niyo po, sa mga guro, maturo niyo lang po talaga yung scientific method ng napakalinaw. You're already setting your students up for success. Kasi po, the scientific method will equip your students with skills that are not only essential but transferable. Magagamit po nila yan in their professional careers kahit hindi STEM, but yan sa pag-solve ng problem. Habang tumatanda ang dami mong problema, kapag meron silang sistema, you're really helping them out a lot. Ayan.
Jeff, merong comment si Alvin.
Ayan. Ayan po. Okay, so may brain drain din po sa mga guro. That is a sad reality. But then, to look on the brighter side of things, that's the reason why we're doing this. Ayan po. So, let's actually help each other. Yun pong mga guro natin ng mga sorry po, sumasabat ang aking passionate din siya. Anyways, so, kapag meron po kayong mga guro na kasamahan na nagsastruggle rin po around this area, please spread the word. Ito pong mga materials natin ay freely accessible po sa ating platforms. Anyways, I like the participation. Ganado pong ating mga guro.
Yes,
but let's
we're warming up.
We will have the chance to cover some of these questions again later. All right. Okay. So ako pala yung magtatanong, kaya pala tumigil. Okay, why do we teach research? So yun na yung tanong ko kanina. I think I have answered that partly kanina. So I jumped the gun. But then, ito po yung i-expect ninyo sa 2 araw ng ating session na ito with JP and Dr. Hiba. So this is the research process. I'm not gonna go line by line on this because iisa-isahin po natin ito. But then what I would like for you all to pay close attention to is underneath each step of the research process are essential skills that we would like for you to strive to develop among your students. And most importantly, from the perspective of a research advisor, yun pong pinakita namin sa pinakababa dito when it comes to generating idea and being creative. Ang gusto po talaga natin dito is like the students should learn or should develop the ability to select a research topic they will investigate by themselves. Ayan. And then secondly, formulating questions tied up to literature research. Alam niyo po ba that the ability of our students to ask or formulate good questions, yun po talaga yung rason kung bakit ka nag-review ng literature. Ituturo po namin yan ni JP. Experiments and data collection, like design and strategy. Alam niyo po ba yun that, by letting them design their project, you're teaching them those skills. And siguro po question of, do we even understand the terms design and strategy? Ako po talaga yung strategy, natutunan ko lang yan when I went to Rice University 2 years ago. I didn't realize I was doing it, but it is a very important skill. So, Day 1 po, in pong first 3 step, tomorrow, we are actually gonna cover data processing, conclusion, report writing, and presentation. So, ito po, maintindihan nyo lang po yung nasa pinakababa nito. Kung ano yung target natin na matutunan ng mga estudyante, I think we can make a whole lot of great progress po sa ating pagiging research advisor. Alright. So, but then, before ulit natin himayin, gusto ko lang din pong i-emphasize sa inyo that partnership between teachers and students in the conduct of research, yan po ang kauna-unahang ingredient that we have to be able to achieve. Teachers should be very collaborative, meaning you're working with your students. You're not only educating them, but in the process, you and the students are educating one another as you perform research. So dito po, gusto ko lang din pong i-highlight that as research advisors, ang inyo po talagang responsibility is to provide guidance on how the students are going to design and execute their projects. And most importantly, ang goal nyo po as teachers ay turuan sila ng skills na kailangan nila. Bilang guru po, it beats the purpose of teaching them scientific research kung kayo ang gagawa or mag-iisip ng ideas at kung kayo ang magde-design ng gagawin nila. So it beats the purpose. Kasi ang nangyayari po dyan, masyadong results-oriented ang mga guro. Ang gusto nyo lang makuha yung tamang sagot or makuha yung expected outcome. But in the process, you are taking away the opportunity for the students to really learn the steps, the lessons, and the challenges that comes with practicing scientific research. So ito po yung challenge na ibibigay ko po sa inyo, na hindi nyo po responsibilidad na pumili ng topic sa mga guro. Mga estudyante, hindi nyo din po responsibilidad na kayo ang mag-design at gumawa ng experiments. Ang role nyo po is to guide them and to teach them the skills. Alright? Okay. Okay, so doon muna po tayo sa first step, generating ideas. And before we proceed with the process, I would just like to highlight the importance of ideas. So ideas are at the core of any research and development process. And let me start by sharing this quote from Edward de Bono about ideas. So ideas are the currency of success and they separate you from your competition. So parang medyo business naman yung context ng definition na yun. But this holds true at all levels. Kasi for example, for students and teachers, like you do research and you do ideation as part of science fairs or science investigatory project, and actually medyo competitive yung landscape sa atin sa pag-perform ng research. Very recently lang po nung nagbago yung curriculum na talagang structured na yung capstone project na requirement na siya sa curriculum, hindi na siya competition. So ang gusto ko pong i-highlight sa inyo sa ating lahat ay most progressive countries, yung pong most powerful countries in the world, what's driving their progress is their citizens' ability to come up with great ideas that they are able to leverage and apply to develop technologies that boost their economies. Ito po, since kulang po tayo ng scientists, meaning po, kulang din po tayo sa ideas that get developed into technologies that can make the Philippines more prosperous. So ideas po, ito po ang currency ng Pilipinas sa success. And ma-share ko lang din po sa inyo. Bakit po ba namin binuo ni JP ang PhilSci Hub? Noon pong 2012, we had a training program in research sa Batangas City po. We had a one-day session with our teachers, and doon po namin nakita na talagang kulang na kulang din po sa training ang ating mga guro when it comes to research. Kasi po, ang karamihan po ng narinig naming question during the Q&A ni JP was, Sir, pahingi po ng topic. Bigyan niyo po kami ng topic. So, medyo nasa-hearten po kami noon kasi ay mukhang medyo kulang din po talaga sa experience siguro ang ating mga guro. Kaya po namin binuo ang Filipino Science Hub. And almost 14 years since the day, tuloy-tuloy po tayo sa ating mga ginagawa. And we are actually very glad to have all of you here kasi nakikita po namin that you are all hungry to learn more about scientific research. Alright? Okay. Question. O siguro po, ito, mag-aano ako na magtatanong sa inyo. Why is it difficult to come up with ideas? Why is ideation hard? Sige nga po, sabihin nyo nga po sa akin, bakit kayo nahihirapan mag-generate ng ideas? Meron po ba?
Kaya wala pang ano.
Oh, wala pa sa hindi po, ay mukhang hindi sila nahihirapan.
Kasi mahirap nga. Mahirap nga.
Bakit ba mahirap? Ideate. Okay. As time goes by, more and more ideas are generated, lessening opportunities for novel ideas. That's actually true. Yung low-hanging fruits, there's not a lot of low-hanging fruits anymore. Sometimes it's because we are overwhelmed with all of the ideas that we do not know where to start. Yan. Students are conditioned to just receive information. Very good point. Limited exposure of students to different or recent scientific researches. So access, diba, sa literature, identifying a problem that is needed to be addressed. Students are not fully aware of the issues to be addressed. Very important point. Pag-uusapan po natin mamaya. Generating ideas needs someone to read a lot. Very important. Lack of research knowledge, trainings, and or foundation. Babaguhin natin yan. Resources to process the methodology and procedures are difficult to come by. So, ang gaganda ng mga sagot naman nila, like really highly relatable. Okay. So, pero siguro itong mga concerns rin na to actually point to, siguro medyo sa downstream steps na, yung review of literature, access to information, and even like designing yung experiments. But then siguro those also tie up to kapag aware ka sa nangyayari sa field, then it's much easier to ideate. Topic should be aligned with national research agenda. Naku, pero po akong slide na nakahanda sa inyo. Actually, hinanda yun ni JP. Ayan. Alright. So, maraming salamat po sa inyong mga sagot. Broadly speaking, it is very difficult to come up with ideas because meron pong notion ang mga tao that great ideas are hard to find. So dito papasok yung sinabi ni Sir, I forgot his name, that ang dami ng ideas na na-generate, medyo bihira na rin yung ideas, which is actually true. Nung panahon nila Einstein, nung panahon nila Heisenberg, ang dami pa po natin hindi naiintindihan. But then, since sobra pong bilis ng development rin and progress natin in the areas of research and development, ngayon po, ang konti na rin po ng opportunities for us to come up with something that's all original. And we'll talk about that when we talk about creativity. Secondly, it is hard to come up with ideas because it requires identifying a problem to solve. Sinabi rin po yun ng ating mga kanina ng ilang sagot dun during the question. Kasi paano mo malalaman ano ba yung problema? But then I will also give you some tips on how to identify problems that you can solve to make sure that you are doing research on something that is important or relevant. Third, how does our environment nurture ideas? Okay, it is very important. Sinabi kanina, students are conditioned to just receive information. Okay. Mahirap pong mag-come up ng ideas if the environment that we foster inside the classroom ay hindi po nag-nurture ng ideas. So meaning, hindi hindi komportable ang mga estudyanteng magbigay ng ideas kasi baka mapahiya, baka pagalitan ng teacher, or baka po nasanay rin ang ating research advisors na kung ano yung naiisip nila, yun yung gagawin ng estudyante. Kapag po ganun yung approach niyo that you are imposing and that you are not really collaborating on how the idea is developing, that is a natural killer of creativity. All right? And then last, some ideas may require resources and expertise that may not have access to. So lahat po ng mga isinagot ninyo ay nandito po. Yan po yung mga natural barriers kung bakit po tayo hindi makakamap ng ideas. Kasi bakit ko pa ito sisimulan? Hindi ko naman alam kung pwede kong gawin. Ayan. Sabi ni J. Ben Lotion, ideation is not the hard part. It is how you defend the relevance and need to pursue the idea that makes one decide to not pursue the idea. But to be honest, that is also part of ideation. Kasi ang gusto ko lang din pong ituro sa inyo, this is also a challenge among scientists, even among some of the world's leading scientists. May notion po kasi ang mga researchers na just because you have thought of a catchy title, people think that that's a good idea. No, an idea is clearly defined. It is focused and actionable. If your idea cannot be directly translated into a set of action plan, that is not a good idea. Okay, so yun po yung gusto ko rin ituro sa inyo. A catchy title does not translate to a good idea. Alright, pag-uusapan po natin yan. Alright, so, bakit ako bumalik? Alright, so, maiintindihan po natin talaga yung process of ideation if we understand the concepts of creativity and innovation. So what is creativity? Creativity is defined as the tendency to generate and recognize ideas, alternatives, or possibilities that may be useful in solving problems, communicating to others, or entertaining ourselves and others. So ang medyo hindi po nakalinyang notion ng ang mga tao when it comes to creativity is they think that it's a mental process. No, creativity is actually measured or gauged based on the quality of the outcomes. So babalik po dun sa nabanggit ko kanina, just because meron kang catchy idea or thought, that doesn't necessarily mean that that thought is creative enough or that is a solid idea. So yan po yung ating i-refine yung understanding natin yan. And then, ano naman yung innovation? So innovation is essentially the implementation of creative ideas. So this is essentially in the context of research and development, this is the development part. And dito po kulang na kulang din ang Pilipino. Kulang po tayo sa innovation and that's partly because kulang din tayo sa creative ideas. So again, babalik po tayo sa fundamentals. The ability to do research is the first step to innovation. Alright. And this is how this process is interrelated. Ito po yung sobrang established sa mga highly developed countries. They have a fairly robust system that implements their creative ideas to boost their economies. Ayan. Siguro po, ito rin yung gusto kong i-highlight. The first skill that we would challenge for your teacher students is that creativity is an essential skill. Actually, yung creativity po in the future, it is no longer an option. If you really want to thrive in whatever it is that you do, you have to learn how to be creative. And being creative is not easy because creativity requires change. And when you're implementing change, usually po may resistance dyan. Creativity also requires for you to challenge or question or even reject some of the aspects of what's established. Kukwestiyonin mo, tama ba yan? Yun bang matagal na natin ginagawa? Yan ba talaga yung tamang paraan ng pag-implement? Creativity also requires risk-taking and most importantly, failing. Okay, ito din po yung gusto kong i-highlight sa mga guro. Just because you are performing scientific research doesn't mean that you will always get the answer right. Performing research doesn't always assure you that you are going to get the outcome that you expect. Sometimes, the essence of performing research is realized by failing or learning that what you initially thought would be the answer is not really the answer. Okay po ba yun? Ayan. Okay, next. Creativity also requires dealing with constraints. So meaning, kung meron kang research question, you're performing a systematic study to do that, but then wala kang gamit, sometimes it forces you to come up with other ways of doing it. And dito din po, gusto kong i-highlight sa ating mga guro that creativity also requires challenging assumptions. Kumbaga, yun bang tingin natin na limitation? Limitation ba talaga yun? Yun bang constraints? Are those real constraints? So that is also that is in part creativity. Yung boundaries na minsan nasa utak lang natin, minsan naman hindi naman talaga sila limitation. So that is something that you should also be teaching your students. Is that the only way to solve a problem? All right. Baka may iba pang paraan. Okay. And then question, siguro po, merong mga creative na mga tao, yan po ba ay namamana lang or yan ba ay natututunan? So, creativity, so essentially it's a mental muscle that everyone has. But then, your ability or your creativity will only be developed if you practice it. Just like every muscle, kailangan mong i-work out. At sa mga guro po, I'm hoping that you're encouraged to teach your students to practice creativity because this is one of the higher order thinking skills na kailangan ng bagong generation. And you have the power to enhance the creativity within our younger generation. All right? Okay. So, ay bumalik ako. Mag-unshare muna ako ng aking screen and magtatanong po ako sa inyo. Familiar po ba tayo sa iba't ibang types of creativity? Sino po sa inyo ang familiar sa different types of creativity?
Yeah, we can just use our quick reactions on the lower tab. Sa mga nasa YouTube po, you can do a thumbs up for a quick response.
Mukhang shy sila. All right. Okay, in the interest of time, there are 3 types of creativity. Creation, synthesis, and modification. All right. Iisa-isahin po natin yan. Okay. So what is creation? Creation is a form of creativity that generates outcomes that nobody has ever thought of or actualized before. So ito yung sinasabi ni Sir kanina na wala nang masyadong mga ganong marami ng ideas na na-generate, ang hirap ng makahanap ng bago. And that is also partly because yung view natin ng creativity is about coming up with something all original that no one has ever thought of, that no one ever understood before, and kayo yung kauna-unahan. But then, this is not the only form of creativity, though I have to say that this is actually considered the highest form of creativity. And if you would put this on the creativity ladder, nandun po siya sa taas, but then, if you are a research advisor, and again, if you are making it a mission na yung pag-perform ng students yung scientific research is for them to practice creativity, you also have to recognize the importance of not forcing creation among your students. Kasi siguro yung term po, let us walk before we run. Siguro po the more suitable approach na maituro yung creativity sa mga students is to get them to practice yung simpler approaches in creativity. So wag muna po natin i-force yung creation. Alright? Kasi iba-iba po ng levels yan. Alright. Okay. The second form of creativity is actually synthesis. So synthesis, you have 2 or more incumbent ideas or technologies and you are combining them to come up with a new idea. Okay, so by the way, mabalik lang ako dito. So nakalimutan ko i-cover yung example. So creation, for example, yung kauna-unahang naka-invento ng internet. Yon, the internet is something that really revolutionized the world. Yung kauna-unahang inventors niyan, they practice creation. For example, like those who were the first to discover CRISPR, creation din yun. So those who are the first movers in a specific field, sila yung nakaka-realize ng ganyang level of creativity. And then, this is naman, you have 1 or 2 concepts or ideas, and then you're combining them to come up with a new idea. So for example, meron tayong uh, mRNA research, for example, like back in the 70s and 80s, which became one of the main precursors of yung mga bagong vaccine technologies, just like that of the COVID vaccine. And then we have nanotechnology. So what happened very recently that really saved the world is yung COVID-19 vaccine na based sa mRNA. So ang ginawa po dyan is they combined din yung final formulation, yung mRNA technology and lipid nanotechnology to formulate the vaccine in such a way na madedeliver natin yung mRNA sa katawan ng tao without it disintegrating and it really targeting yung viral disease. And fun fact lang po, yung isa sa mga original inventors ng lipid nanotechnology to formulate the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine ay katrabaho ko po ngayon. So yun po. So they practiced, so yung nag-invento po ng bakunang yan, they combined mRNA technology as well as nanotechnology to come up with a vaccine. So yan po. That is synthesis. You're combining two ideas into one. All right. And then the next type of creativity naman is modification. So modification is you have an established system and you're just changing one aspect or one component of it. So for example, yung catalyst. So I don't know if you're familiar with catalyst po. So for the benefit of everyone, a catalyst is a material that speeds up the rate of a reaction. So for example, when it comes to environmental remediation, if you have toxins in water, sometimes po gumagamit tayo ng catalyst para i-degrade yung mga toxic compounds sa tubig. So that's part of water treatment. Iron, for example, compounds of iron are typically used for as anti-remediation agents. And yung iron na yan, sometimes it's soluble in water and sometimes they put it on oxide supports. Pinapatong nila doon. And then meron din naman po tayong technology such as graphene. So graphene is a unique type of solid material that's based on carbon. So medyo iba yung property niya from the usual solids such as like silica and alumina. And so modification, I would actually use an example of a very dear friend of mine from the University of the Philippines. So she is Professor May Joan Aguila and she's been doing research on graphene. But what she did was they discovered that they know that there are some functions on the surface of graphene na pwede nilang lagyan ng iron. So naglagay sila ng iron or ng ibang metals dun sa surface ng graphene and they used the new substance as an agent to oxidize or decompose toxic organic materials in water. So, ginawa nila, minodify lang nila, binago lang nila yung surface ng graphene to come up with a new material as catalyst for a known application. And that is modification. So, anong nangyayari po dito? Yung synthesis at modification, these are forms of creativity where hindi ka nagka-come up ng something na all original at never been done before or never thought of before. You're essentially building on what others had developed or established to come up with something new. Ang catch lang dyan is what you came up with is incremental. So meaning, in-improve mo lang. In-improve mo, hindi ikaw yung bumuo from the ground up. But then what's actually is a very important point to raise is that all these forms of creativity are important. Kailangan po natin ito sa mundo. Ang research naman po natin ginagawa is not just to come up with something that is original. Sometimes, the technology that could transform the world is requiring the lower order creativity types. So yun po. So gusto ko po sanang ma-appreciate nyo to na pwede pong ang research topics ng mga estudyante nyo is improvement or extension. Siguro ito yung sinasabing research extension na sir kanina. Extension lang of other people's research. All right. I'm hoping that actually hopefully improved your appreciation of creativity and the types of ideas that your students can tackle. Ayan. So 5-minute Q&A po. Meron po ba kayong mga tanong? About creativity, about the types of ideas that you can come up with depending on the creative process. May question po?
Huwag kayong mahiya. This is your time.
Opo. Actually, ang value po nitong
Oh.
mga pinagagagawa natin, yung mga sinasabi po namin, you can read them on books, you know. But then, kami po, we have the practical experience para po mapakita sa inyo na yung iba pong mga nangyayari dito, yung struggle niyo po sa school, kahit po mga scientists na mga nagtrabaho na to for 10, 20, 30 years, these are struggles that everyone has to navigate over. Kahit pagano mo to i-practice. And po, ang magagawa po namin sa inyo is to make you comfortable in the uncertainty, to make you comfortable while tackling the challenges.
May mga questions, Dr. Jeff.
Ayan, okay. So the reason po why to emphasize research gaps, since almost everything has been studied, para mas creative, mag-modify na lang or mag-synthesize. You know what? Actually po, that is like an acceptable approach. Modify and mag-synthesize. But then, while you're doing modification and synthesis, sometimes one thing that I did not mention here is serendipity. You know, okay lang mag-practice kayo ng simpler creativity, but then sometimes pleasant accidents happen. And maniniwala po ba kayo that karamihan ng mga creative ideas that were established from 100 years ago, hindi naman po yun talagang pinakaisip lang ng mga tao na ay ito, siguro with the exception of a few of them like Einstein and those like who came up with the mathematical models of the world. Yun po talagang durugan ng utak yun. Pero marami rin po mga discoveries that serendipitously happened just because the experiments that they did failed. Yun po, minsan aksidente lang din. So start where you are comfortable, start doing something that can actually that match your resources. Kasi yung creative pursuit, meaning kapag po marami kayong uncertainties, meaning marami kayong kailangang gamit. Mag-start muna po kayo dun sa simple. There's nothing wrong with that. At yun din po yung gusto namin i-debunk sa inyo. Kami po, I'm working for a corporate for one of the biggest R&D organizations in the world. Hindi po lahat creation ang ginagawa namin. Meron po kaming highly profitable technologies that are just like incremental improvement. Yung halos wala kang binago. It's just like modification. And that is not looked down upon. Do you know why? Because ang basehan po talaga ng relevance ng ginagawa mo is the impact. You might end up like spending all of your resources trying to come up with something that is original, but then at the end of the day, if it doesn't have value, if it doesn't have application, then no one would care. Right? So minsan po, less is more. Yung simple, minsan mas impactful yan. So medyo, yun po yung gusto namin baliin, na minsan po kasi may pagka-elitista rin. Ako po, nung bata akong scientist, ang gusto ko, I would like to win the Nobel Prize. You know, I would do this and I would do this. But then you also realize that's not how the world goes. Siguro yung glamour lang or honor na you discovered something that you're the first in the world to come up with or discover. Siguro po may bragging rights yun, meron yung ibang sense of fulfillment. But majority po ng technologies around the world are modifications and synthesis. So be comfortable doing those. And encourage students kapag ang ideas nila ay modification or synthesis, that's all okay. Alright? For example, can you call it modification if you do the same research but you just add more samples? No. What do you mean like more samples po? Kasi if it's the same idea, but do you mean po like doing more experiments?
If it's extension to another group of samples, probably. Pero kung nagdagdag ka lang ng subjects or participants, probably.
Validation lang yun.
That's a very important point. Ayan. Alam niyo po, eto, kami tatlo nila, Mama Connie at nila JP, nagchichikahan na lang, ganito ka-informal to. So, ayan, keep the questions coming in. One of the challenges teachers facing in teaching research is that majority of the students lack the motivation to read. Yeah.
Basic
po
skill
talaga.
po yan.
And sa mga STEM teachers po, we highly encourage for you to come up with an integrated program along with language teachers. Kasi po magkakadikit-dikit yan. Yun pong ability natin to perform research kapag po hindi marunong sa reading comprehension, hindi nila maintindihan ano ba yung problema, what information they can use to solve problems.
Totoo yan.
Kapag hindi po solid yung math, lalaglag na kayo sa quantitative aspect of performing research. Kapag po hindi klaro yung scientific method, kahit po naiintindihan mo yung scientific concept, you won't be able to deploy your fundamental knowledge kung hindi mo alam din yung tamang sistema.
Tama. Kasi kahit kung gusto nyong mag-modify, kung hindi mo rin naintindihan yung original experiment, kung ano talaga yung principle behind it, hindi mo siya ma-modify, di ba?
Yes. Yes. And lalo na po yung simpleng experimentation, magpo-formulate ka, kapag laglag ka sa math, yung probability mo, lalo-lalo na kapag kulang ka sa resources, ilang pagtitimpla ng solution or ng experiment yung gagawin mo. Diba? So, magkakadikit-dikit po yan. And that's also partly the reason why I would like to highlight na pag nagtuturo po tayo research, huwag po sanang individualistic. There is strength in numbers. So, pwede po kayo mag-assemble ng team na, yung mga estudyanteng i-assemble ko, ito magaling magbasa yung isa. Ikaw yung mag-cover ng literature. Ito magaling sa math. Itong isa systematic. Ang galing sa science.
Collaboration talaga.
Opo. Lalo-lalo na sa high school, hindi po yan thesis. So, try to get to know your students and build the teams in such a way that diverse po yung kanilang talent and skills and magko-complement yun. Alright? Kasi medyo bihira na po kasi din siguro ngayon ang mga estudyanteng well-rounded. Ayan. Okay. Sir, question po. Synthesis rin po ba yung if nag-a-adapt lang po ng established methods tapos pagsasamahin mga methods sa mga research? Yeah. Pero basta
That's exactly the definition.
That is a definition of synthesis. But then, siguraduhin nyo lang din po yung topic at saka yung subjects na gagawin nyo. Medyo may pagkakaiba naman po.
And the application is different.
The application is different.
Yeah, yung end application. Diba?
Yep. We have the generation of most impatient in learning. Totoo po yan. Kaya po, ito din po, ganito yung po yung pag-approach namin sa pagtuturo sa mga guro ng research na wag po tayong mag-focus masyado dun sa outcome ng research. Yun pong skills, yung step. At lalo-lalo na po, how much time do students have to perform research within a calendar year? If you start in the beginning of the school year, 10 months, most likely po, if you're really taking your research seriously, bihira po kayong makatapos ng kompletong research. So, wag po tayong maging outcome or output oriented. You have to focus on the steps and the skills that they have to develop. Okay, we're gonna have to move on kasi I will course through like some of the steps quite quickly kasi halos mga ngalahati na po yung ating oras we're reserving.
Pero magaganda yung questions sila but hopefully we can address this. There's a question of AI. So,
yep. And towards the end, kung may appetite pa po kayo to extend yung Q&A past 1 p.m., it's your call. But then, gusto lang po namin makover ni JP yung content namin within the 3 hours and then accommodate some questions in the process. Alright. Okay, warning. Ito lang din po yung gusto namin ito. Ito yung lagi, para po kami sa ramplakan ni JP nito. Karamihan po, ang understanding ng ating mga guro, since, scientific method sa first year high school sa book, the scientific method is from steps 1 to 6. So ang pagkakaturo po niyan sa mga estudyante, linear. Okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and then after this, I'm gonna do that. Sa totoong buhay po, hindi po yan totoo. Because research projects and the scientific method, if you really are practicing it, it is not linear. It is iterative. It is cyclical in nature. Right po, Sir Alvin, it is cyclical in nature. So, sa totoong buhay po, if you're practicing the scientific method, even yung idea generation, it is an iterative process. So meaning, you're gonna come up with an idea that is usually broad, and then you do literature search to better understand ano ba yung nangyayari sa field, ano yung kulang, ano yung kailangan, ano yung questions na dapat nyo sagutin. And as you do that process, marirealize mo na, ay yung idea ko, the way I framed it, hindi pa pala siya focused, hindi pa pala siya masyadong actionable. So sometimes, you have to do that process cyclically or iteratively multiple times. And then kapag comfortable ka na, doon sa ginagawa mo and that you have already identified a focus enough topic and an actionable set of research questions, that's when you move on and design your experiments and you collect the data. And as you collect the data and process it, marirealize mo na, teka, parang may mali doon sa pagkakadesign ko kasi, for example, mali yung pagkakaintindi ko na itong theory na to. So kapag nangyari yun na, yung lumalabas na resulta doon sa experiments mo, ay hindi rin masyadong kalinya ng hypothesis mo at na-realize mo na meron akong aspect na hindi naintindihan, minsan babalik ka pa rin doon sa review of literature to further refine your research questions. So again, pabalik-balik po yan. So kapag ang process nyo na research ay linear lang, ay nako, bihira po kayo makakome up ng robust and high quality outcome. Alright? So ito po yung hihimayin namin ni JP dito sa training course na ito. Okay, so like I said, after ng ideation, pag naisip mo tayo, I have a good idea. Minsan ang tendency ng mga tao, diretso na dun sa solution. Okay, magde-design ako, ito yung gagawin ko. So people jump to the solution and then the quality of the idea, kapag yung idea mo is ill-defined, usually po kapag hindi ka nag-spend ng time to develop your idea, masasayang yung resources mo. Kasi gawa ka ng experiment, marirealize mo, kailangan mo magpaikot-ikot kasi yung idea mo hindi actionable. So minsan nakasampu ka ng ulit ng experiment, saka mo lang na-realize na, ay hindi pa pala refined, hindi pa pala klaro yung idea or yung research questions na gusto kong sagutin. Hindi pa pala klaro kung gaano ka-relevant yung research questions ko doon sa area na gusto kong i-address. Alright. Okay, so choosing a research topic. So how do we do this? Okay, so if you are a teacher sa high school, for example, paano po ba, sige magtanong nga po, okay, paano po ba yung proseso nyo sa school po? Kasi iba po sa college, kasi usually pag sa college, siguro experience namin nila JP, tsaka nila Mama Connie sa UP, we would join a group, may research advisor, meron na silang program. So technically, yung topics, hindi din kami yung nagka-come up originally. Paano po ba yung proseso sa mga schools nyo? Do you assign a topic or do the students come up with the topics? Okay, based on current or phenomenon. So kung ano yung na-obserbahan siguro nila, by their line of senior high school track, they identify a topic to work on. Okay, so this is also quite encouraging na sila po either way. So siguro meron ding path na yung teacher yung nag-iisip. For my class, I introduced po the first national research agenda.
And they develop their topic.
Okay, that's very important. But then to be honest, okay po, yung siguro where we start is, ay nakakatuwa naman itong mga gurong to. May umaabot na sa SDG. Okay, that's very encouraging. Okay. Siguro po kudos to all of you. These are all great approaches po. So okay, so unang-una, it is very important that students pursue a topic that they're interested. But then lalagyan po natin ng caveat yan. As research advisors, that's encouraged for them to pursue their areas of interest, but then also very important po na kailangan may nakatali dyan na relevance. And paano ba natin may establish yung relevance? So actually parang sabi ko, okay, there's a couple of ways by which you can actually do this. So dapat you begin with the end in mind. So yung mind mapping. So meron kang idea ngayon, but then you also have to be able to visualize what the outcome is. So medyo sasabihin na, sir, medyo kino-contradict mo yung sinabi mo kanina na don't be output oriented. That still holds true. Okay? So you're gonna perform research. What I was just trying to say is you should welcome the outcome. So you should begin with that in mind. Dapat alam mo kung ano yung intended result mo. But then in practicing research, pwedeng hindi mo yun makuha. magkaiba po yung magkaiba po yun. So mind mapping is, say for example, if you wanna pursue research like along the line, like within the health field, dapat klaro rin sa'yo, saan ba ito mapupunta? Hindi naman yung napaka-broad na, ay gusto ko lang mag-research on health. Ayan. O yan, for example, we give general topics based on UN SDG. So even like from that perspective po, okay, like SDGs, meron silang themes, but then those themes are still like fairly broad. So as if you're advising po, siguro i-lead natin yung mga students sa what specific element or aspect of that SDG do you want to work on? Okay. So dito na po papasok yung, in the context of the Philippines, kung hindi niyo po alam kung saan kayo pupunta, regularly, the Department of Science and Technology rolls out what we call a harmonized national research and development agenda. So ito po yung set of focus areas that our government identifies to be in need of critical research and development activities. So kung yung mga estudyante nyo po would end up identifying topics along or within these areas, medyo din po kayo mapapataas niyo po yung probability that the ideas that they are gonna come up with have social relevance. Kumbaga may kapupuntahan talaga yung kanilang research effort. So gamitin po natin itong mga guidance na to. And then SDG, that's also like a very important set of guidance kasi that's a global initiative. No? So those are global themes that we need to tackle from a research and development perspective rin po. Kasi yun po yung key para lahat ng tao sa buong mundo can enjoy a very high quality of life. All right. Okay. So, project ideation. So, ang gusto ko lang din pong i-highlight sa ating mga teachers dito po is that, okay, when you ideate, lalo na sa high school level, di ba yung concern nyo po kanina ay wala po kaming gamit. Hindi po namin masyadong naiintindihan ng context. So, kaya po namin inuulit-ulit kanina na okay lang na ang research na gagawin ng mga estudyante nyo ay simple. Just because we also acknowledge that meron din pong limitation when it comes to resources. Actually, kahit po sa mga mayayamang bansa, wala naman pong research group na unlimited ang funding. So what's very important that you are also able to teach your students is that when they form their ideas and they make plans to implement their project, they also have to learn the skills of preparing or identifying a scope. And yung scope na yon should be based on their skill level. Okay? So meaning, kung nasa high school level ka, at yung research na gusto mong gawin will require a PhD skills, medyo hindi po compatible ang inyong tina-target sa inyong kakayahan. So, medyo i-adjust po natin yan. Or if not, you have to seek guidance or the expertise of those who are experts in the field. Ayan. Resources, very important rin po. Kung ang gamit po na kailangan nyo ay nasa Maynila at kayo po ay nasa Mindanao, baka po you might have to adjust your research topic and research questions to tackle into a scope that is, again, as I said, actionable. Dapat kaya nyo i-implement yung mga binabalak ninyo as part of your research. Alright? Medyo yung mouse ko ay ano. Okay. And then dito rin po, yung question kanina na, Sir, paano ko po ma-assure na yung topic na pinipili namin ay may relevance? For example, kapag hindi part ng DOST's National Research Agenda, kapag hindi part ng SDG, paano po namin malalaman? So, an approach to identifying a research problem to tackle na gusto niyo pong may relevance is by practicing design thinking. So ano ba itong design thinking? So design thinking is a non-linear and iterative process that your students can implement to first understand the need or to understand the problem. And then more importantly, talk to people or stakeholders who are faced with that problem, and then design a study or a set of solutions based on what they learn from those stakeholders. So medyo masyadong generic yung pagkaka-define ko dyan. Pero the best way to do this is by tackling an example. So for example, kung kayo po ay nasa isang komunidad that is quite agricultural in nature and nagkaroon ng call yung government yun na, ay, ano po, meron po kaming mga resources na i-deploy para po masuportahan natin yung mga pangangailangan ng ating mga magsasaka. And sinabi nila, magbibigay kami ng pondo sa mga makakagawa ng makaka-come up ng solutions para maiwasan yung pagkapeste ng mga manok sa barangay or sa pagkakaroon ng sakit ng palay sa ating lugar. What you do with design thinking is, you don't go straight to the books na yung problem mo is local, pero ang gagawin mo, pupunta ka sa Google Scholar, magbabasa ka lang ng papers, and yung solution na ipopropose mo is based lang dun sa nabasa mo. Sometimes, the best approach is you immerse yourself, you go to the farming communities, you observe, and you talk to the farmers, for example. At kapag naging klaro na sa'yo kung ano yung challenges and problema ng mga farmers, that is actually how you formulate your research questions. Ano ba yung mga challenges nila? Ano ba yung gaps sa kanilang sistema? Ano ba yung mga problema nila na pwede kong solusyonan? And kapag na-identify nyo na yun, that's when you go and look and search the literature for potential solutions or studies that you can actually take inspiration from to come up with an answer to a local problem. Yun po yun. So sometimes you have to immerse yourself first and really observe before you go to the literature and maghanap ng solusyon. Kasi ang problem po kasi minsan na ginagawa natin, we think we know what they need without really asking the stakeholders kung ano pa talaga yung pangangailangan nila. That is design thinking. You go to your intended end user, you ask them what they need. You ask them kung ano ba yung kapasidad nila. And then you come up with a solution. And to be honest, this is actually a very impactful way of doing research and development. Kasi you are really designing the research based on an existing and clearly understood challenge. Okay? And this is iterative kasi sometimes ito pong design thinking process, you talk, you understand, you do research, you come up with a plan. Yung pagpaplano po hindi siya down to perfection, up to perfection. Ang ginagawa mo, kapag meron ka ng basic idea, you implement it with minimal resources, and then as you test it, marirealize mo ano yung kulang, ano yung magandang elements or ano yung advantages nitong solution ko. And then as you learn, as you do it iteratively until you come up with the best solution. Ayan. Ito po yung medyo mabilis na approach sa pag-solve ng problem or sa pag-perform ng research. Alright, so it requires agility. Okay, 5-minute question. Do you have questions about what we just discussed?
Merong isang question, Jeff.
Which one? What is the difference between capstone project or scientific research? Okay, I will also have to say this. Yung capstone project po, ngayon ko lang siya na-encounter, yun yung tinatawag po ng mga sa atin sa Pilipinas sa education system sa research nung nag-K-12. But then I think it based sa understanding ko parang parehas lang din po kasi yun. Iba lang yung pagkakatawag. Siguro po more general lang yun kasi di ba may iba-ibang strand, baka po yung research kasi yung scientific research na specify sa system, but somebody please correct me if I am wrong. Ayun po. How do you cite those personal observations in the paper? You know what? Actually po, you can say that. Yeah, we actually visited this particular area and interviewed like 10 farmers or 10 fisher folks. And then ito yung mga naging sagot nila. And then perhaps you also did your own investigation. You took pictures. Ito yung sakit ng palay. Alam nyo po, yung observations na yan, siguro ito po yung medyo challenge rin. Kasi when coming up with the conceptual framework or justification for what we're doing, ang nasanay po tayo na kailangan huhugutin natin yan sa reference paper. If you
Yeah,
feel
but then I do that a lot. So at the end of my sentence or statement, meron akong parenthesis first personal communication.
yes,
And
hindi
it is accepted. Yeah, it's accepted.
Yes, hindi po nyo kailangan laging huhugutin niya sa peer-reviewed journal. And also, na-trigger po ako. Naalala ko na naman. Kasi merong mga teachers sa Pilipinas na nagre-require na yung basis for the information that students would use to contextualize their research na dapat within the last 5 years. Mali po yun. Paano? Yung pong mga nagawa ni Einstein ay older than 5 years. Invalidated na po ba yun? Wag po tayong ganun. Medyo mali po yung konteksto na yun. Minsan po, merong 200-year-old na established fundamental knowledge that remains true to this day.
Exactly.
Hindi ko po alam kung saan yun napulot ng mga kasamahan natin, pero palagi po namin yung nai-encounter in trainings like this na there are institutions or educators requiring na within the last 5 years. Parang if for as long as the body of knowledge is not disproved, that will remain valid. That can be used to contextualize.
But in my field,
yes.
in my field, we always do review of lit. So it always comes start from 50 years ago. This is what happened. And now this is what it is.
Okay, so thanks for the clarification po, sir. Pero siguro po, I'm hoping that yung teachers dapat maano nila yan, contextualize nila that for educational research lang yan. Ano po? When I wrote my thesis last 10 years yung requirement namin, Ma'am Jenny, wag po niyong paniwalaan. I mean, it's quite unfortunate, I have to say. Ito po, medyo nakaka-frustrate po kasi marinig to. Kasi kapag ganun po yung naturo, I'm hoping po wag niyo po yung i-apply sa mga estudyante niyo. Kasi kapag tinuro niyo po yun, your students might be missing out on a lot of very solid body of work na mas matagal sa 5 or 10-year period. And one very important thing rin po, high quality review of literature can save you years worth of work, and it will also save you or prevent you from doing the wrong experiments.
Exactly.
Pag-usapan po natin ito. Usually po, 10 years po. Medyo baguhin na po natin yan kahit po 100 years. Like I said, ang gamitin niyo pong analogy to challenge your teachers ay, yun po bang ginawa ni Einstein, hindi na po ba natin pananiniwalaan? So, ganun nyo lang po yan sagutin. Tuturuan ko po kayong medyo mag-i-challenge yung mga ganyang bagay kasi unfounded po yan. Okay. When you come up with an idea, typically, you start broad and then you have to focus it. So like I said, solid idea, focused and actionable. Nung nag-PhD po ako, ang tinuro sa akin ng aking PhD advisor ay, when you're pitching an idea, your idea is not solid yet if your panel asks you, okay, this is your proposed research topic. What's the first set of experiments that you will do tomorrow if we give you the funding? Kapag hindi mo yung nagawa, hindi pa solid yung idea mo. Hindi pa siya ganun ka-actionable. Yun po talaga ang usually basehan ng seasoned scientist kapag yung idea na pinopropose mo is already developed. Alright? Again, actionable, clear, and relevant. And yung process po na to requires deductive reasoning since we start thinking broadly, but you have to come up with a way to unpack that particular topic in a way na makaka-identify ka ng specific problems or challenge points and translate them into questions that you will answer as you prepare, as you conduct your research. So how does review literature get structured? So ito po, pag-uusapan po natin yan mamaya. Meron po tayong mga tips on how to do that. Alright. So for example po, ito yung gagamitin ko to contextualize the next slide. So again, very important to clearly identify the problem. So project ideas and solutions should be designed around a relevant, medyo naulit yung sinabi ko sa nakaraang slide. So for example, this is a situation. I synthesized gold nanoparticles on graphene. But then I also read that several studies revealed that gold nanoparticles have medicinal applications such as anti-cancer treatment. So now my question is, can my materials be used for the same application? So you can actually start that way. Ito medyo broad pa rin to, no? Kasi ang tanong lang, pwede ko bang i-apply ito sa anti-cancer research? But then, as you develop your topic, what you have to do is, you have to learn more about the field, right, of anti-cancer. So if you pick that topic up with a fellow student or a collaborator, if you're a teacher and you would like to recruit the help of your student in refining this idea, minsan yung conversation develops this way. So sasabihin ng isa, I read that gold nanoparticles are anti-cancer agents. So I learned that uniformity of size and geometry of these nanoparticles improve their efficacy. However, these materials are expensive to make. So as a potential drug, the synthesis process adds significantly to its cost. So meaning, mahal daw kapag kinokontrol mo yung size at shape ng nanoparticles. But then, as we develop the idea, your collaborator might end up coming across information that would inform you that based on the paper that he read, that claimed that size and shape uniform silver nanoparticles were synthesized using a method that is cheap and under mild conditions, your collaborator then came up with a modification, if you will, saying that like since gold and silver have similar chemistries or properties, perhaps we can adapt this approach to address the challenge you shared. So ano ba nangyari dito? So how did they come up with a better understanding of the field and potential methods or solutions to their challenges? Ano ba yung ginawa nila dito? So technically, what those two did was they reviewed the literature and they used the information that they got from the literature first to refine the problem that they're trying to solve. So meron silang specific question like, can they make size and shape controlled or uniform nanoparticles, and then can they make it cheap? And then in the process of reading the literature, the other person came up with a potential way by which they can control the size and shape in a way that is cheap. So yun nangyari doon. So what they did, what was crucial there was the review of literature, review of scientific literature. And again, you have to exert significant effort in your review of literature for you to be able to refine your idea and come up with specific questions and most importantly, potential solutions. Okay? And I would like to highlight on this slide that literature review is a step that can serve as a training ground for your students to learn how to formulate research questions. Okay? Yung review of literature po, hindi lang siya yung magbabasa lang ako. No. As they read, they have to consume and analyze the information and in the process, come up with questions. Okay? Yun po yun. Hindi yung, ang review of literature po, gusto ko pong i-debunk sa ating understanding na hindi lang po yan na nagko-collect tayo ng information na mukhang related and then pagsasama-samahin lang po natin yan. Hindi po ganun ang review of literature. You are using it for you to formulate better questions and for you to come up with an actionable plan on how you are going to answer those questions. Okay. So review of literature, kung lalabas po sa screen ang okay, medyo hindi po visible. Meron po kami dyang training course, meron po kaming webinar on the review of literature po featuring Dr. Janice Averilla, who's a scientist based in upstate New York. Nandyan din po ako. So you may want to review that on PhilSci Hub's YouTube channel. So doon po kami nagbigay ng kumbaga more specific steps or approaches on how to review the literature. But then what I would just like to highlight is in comparison po, from the time that I was a thesis research or undergraduate researcher in UP, nag-explode na po yung access, yung kumbaga avenues for you to access information because of information technology. So you have databases such as like Google Scholar or ResearchGate and like freely accessible or open access journal publication. So gamitin po natin yan. But then also at the same time, I also highly encourage for you to inform your students that wag po natin i-take for granted ang books at saka yung thesis or prior works, yung printed versions of studies. Kasi po, the more materials that you can access, mas magiging robust po yung view nyo of the field kasi mas kompleto, mas updated, and then again, don't take for granted old but highly reliable bodies of study. Now, what I would also encourage for you all to do is sa Pilipinas po kasi nasanay lang tayo dyan sa mga ganyan published journals na from academics or peer-reviewed publications, but then hindi po tayo din masyadong sanay sa non-traditional sources of information. Non-traditional sources of information. Teka, mag-meeting po ako ng... So non-traditional sources of information such as patents or intellectual properties. So I would also highly encourage for you to learn how to read patents. So meron din po kami webinar sa Filipino Science Hub focusing on this. Part din po ng webinar on review of literature. But then actually yung pong patents are a very good source of information, lalong-lalo na kung gusto nyo mag-invento, if you would like to innovate or come up with a new technology, because marami pong mga cutting-edge technologies and discoveries na hindi pinapublish sa academic journals. The fastest way for you to learn of them is by reading patents. Nandyan po talaga yung, kumbaga, state-of-the-art systems na hindi po openly pinapublicize ng mga kumpanya just because pag naintindihan nyo na yun sa academic journals, edi yung competition nila mas magiging stiff. So patents are also a very good source of information. Okay, so as I said po, yung review of literature is your key to formulating research questions and better contextualizing your idea. So what I will do here po is give you some tips and ipapakita ko po sa inyo mamaya kung paano nyo ba gagamitin yung information that you get from the literature in order for you to come up with a good conceptual framework or yung sa introduction natin and yung justification ng study. So papasadahan lang din po natin to ng medyo mabilis. So una po, as you formulate your research questions or your research problem, establish the need for addressing the problem. Secondly, you have to highlight the ideal state versus the current state. So meaning, ano ba yung state of the art? Ano ba yung pinakamaganda ng nagawa? And by learning that, may isip mo rin, okay, ito na yung pinakamaganda. Ano pa yung kulang? Ano pa yung hindi nila nagagawa? That is a way of framing your research problem. And that could be a specific question that you can answer as you perform the research. Formulating your research questions as well could also involve asking your 5W questions. Okay, who's involved? Like what is the problem? Where is this problem? When is the solution most critical? And then why are we really performing this research? But then as you formulate your research questions, so you have a topic or an idea, when you are refining your idea, again, dapat may kaakibat yan na specific question na sasagutin mo. And your research questions po that you're formulating are also the basis for your research objectives. At the end of your research, din po in your research questions or research objectives should be answered by your data. Okay, so for example, during the pandemic, okay, doon sa ginawa kong example, a very broad topic na pwede maging starting point is I would like to perform anti-cancer research. But then yung napakita ko sa inyong comic strip kanina, nag-progress yung conversation in such a way that they narrowed their research topic down to, okay, we would like to develop cost-effective and size and shape uniform gold nanoparticles as anti-cancer drugs. And then, for example, in this context, in mice. So makikita nyo na yung topic na yon is clear, actionable, and then just like from the choice of subject, makikita mo that it's an anti-cancer research, an anti-cancer agent. So then makikita, this is going to be highly relevant in the field of health and medicine. Okay? Okay na. So, dito na tayo papasok. Paano ba natin gagamitin yung review of literature to come up with your conceptual framework? Paano ka ba gagawa? Ito po usually ma-encounter nyo sa introduction. So, yung introduction natin, yung usual structure niyan, you start with the proposed work. But then din sa proposed work mo na yun, you construct it by answering specific questions. So ito po dapat iklaro nyo sa mga estudyante that when they're writing introductions dun sa proposed work, first they have to be clear on what is the proposed research about. Ano ba talaga yung sinosolve nila? And this will also answer the question of why do you want to do this? As you talk about or as you unpack your proposed work, your motivation should also be based on some information, and I would like to qualify it. Dito sinabi ko literature information, but then yung sinabi din po ni Dr. Hibas, sometimes yung context or your motivation could be from conversation, right? Or from your own immersion in the problem. So ito po, dapat klaro sa kanila na yung pagsusulat niyan, it's based on a set of questions that if they answer quite well, would clearly communicate the proposed work. Ano ba talaga yung gusto mong gawin at kung bakit? And then, dyan din po sa introduction usually, whether it be in a proposal or in the final report, naglalagay din po tayo dyan ng section where we actually highlight what's been done in the field. So ano ba yung progress or what are the developments in your chosen area of research? And you are using those developments to justify your interest like in the research topic. Okay? And then, yung sinabi ko kanina, state of the art. Ano ba yung pinakamaganda ng nagawa dyan? And that will really help contextualize yung importance ng gagawin mo. Gagawin ko to kasi yung pinakamagandang sistema out there may kulang pa. At yung kulang na yun yung i-deliver ng research ko. What is not clearly established from the state of the art is something that I will try to better understand through this research. So ganun po yun, ipapakita nyo. Kahit ano pa yung mga state of the art, usually po may mga kulang pa dyan. Dyan papasok yung modification and synthesis na though ito nagamit na for this application, hindi pa ito nagagamit for this application. So ito yung part na yun. Yun po yung rason kung bakit ka nagagawa ng literature review. To paint what's already been done and to also clearly paint what has not been done before and why you are doing it. Okay? And then lastly, kung napansin niyo po, yung lahat yung first two parts, though leverage ka ng published literature or information that you get like from immersion or interview, all of those contexts that you're building upon will all have to get distilled out in the form of a research problem or question, and then following it with your hypothesis. So this is needed, therefore I am gonna do this, and this could be the potential outcome and impact. This is how you leverage the literature to establish yung conceptual framework. Bakit nyo ginagawa or bakit nyo gagawin yung research na yun. Okay, so hindi lang po yan randomly, ito yung title, yung topic ko nandun sa title ng paper na yun. So kukopyahin ko lang itong sentence na to. Hindi po ganun yun. You are essentially coming up with a story. You're coming up with a coherent narrative. Magkakadikit po yan and yung context na binubuo mo dyan will all boil down to a clear set of objectives, a clear set of questions that you're intending to answer through experimentation and potential and hypothesis or potential answers to your questions. All right? Okay po ba? Okay, so ito yung mga examples. For example, a proposed work. The synthesis of cheap and size uniform gold nanoparticles is proposed, ultimately addressing challenges in the development of economic and anti-cancer drugs. So di ba, napakaklaro nun? And then you're gonna cite like some examples in the literature, such as several studies indicate that size uniform transition metals are more effective anti-cancer drugs. Follow that up with recent advances in nanoparticle synthesis methodology suggest that cheaper precursors and mild conditions can be employed. And then of course, you're gonna cite like specific examples there. And then towards the end, size uniform gold nanoparticles can be more effective anti-cancer drugs, and the use of cheap organic templates and milder conditions based on the cited literature can significantly reduce the cost of gold nanoparticles. So dyan na po makikita yung hypothesis nyo, magkakadugsong yan. So kung ano man yung gusto mong isolve at maintindihan, you're contextualizing it around what other people have established, but then at the end of it, klaro why you're doing it. You're applying what other people have done to come up with something that is better or more effective. Ayan. So, siguro magpo-pause lang muna ako dito to ask questions.
Merong questions, Jeff.
Okay. Teka, matap lang po ako na sharing for us to be able to answer questions. Kumukonekta po ba? Please let us know po kung nagkakaroon po siguro ngayon kayo ng hopefully clear understanding bakit ba tayo nagbabasa ng papers. Paano ba natin pinagsasama-sama yung mga konseptong nababasa natin in a way na ma-establish natin why are we doing this and what are we really trying to do. Ayan. And then JP and Dr. Hibas, if you have anything to add. Ano po yung mga questions?
Mga questions here is from Wendell Cruz. Mali po ba na mababago na yung na-come up nyo na title if nabago ang RRL, yung hypothesis nyo due to naka-come up kayo ng bagong idea? If it's a totally new topic, I guess, then...
Actually po, hindi po siya mamamali. What you call that is refinement of your idea. Refinement of your, essentially po, nare-refine mo. Actually, the quality of your idea is improving kasi mas maayos yung basihan mo kumpara dun sa simula. Okay? So, actually, yung analogy ko po dyan, and I'm glad na tinanong niyo po yan, dapat medyo baliin po natin yan. Siguro yung challenge dyan is, nag-propose ka ng topic sa professor mo, and then gumawa ka ng review of literature, and then nabago, no? Nabago yung context, hindi pala yun yung gusto mo, hindi pala yun yung mga tanong na dapat sagutin. So, you just have to be able to communicate to your teachers that we did our own due diligence work. Pag understand sa literature, this is actually the more relevant question to ask. There is no such thing as a wrong idea or namamali yung idea. Actually, mas magiging maganda yung quality ng idea nyo kapag na-refine nyo siya based on your review of literature.
Yeah.
And kapag in-insist nung teacher nyo na, hindi ko ano yung na-post nyo nung una, yun yung gagawin nyo. So, medyo may mali din sa thought process. Yung kaparehas lang yun nung, ay teka, parang yung resulta ko hindi consistent sa hypothesis ko, so therefore, mali yung result. Ang gusto ko sabihin sa inyo sa mga ganyan.
Mali yung...
Yeah, nature won't lie. Nature will do what it wants to do. So kung yung resulta nyo ay hindi consistent sa hypothesis nyo, mas malamang mali yung hypothesis nyo.
Yeah.
At yon yung dapat nyong bantayan. Kasi pag finorce yung topic, pero yung review of literature nyo, sinasabi sa inyo na, ay walang sense na gawin to. Kasi nagawa na nila yung experiment. Dapat actually sabihin nyo sa teacher nyo na yun na magsasayang lang po tayo ng resources, magsasayang po ng oras, wala pong kapupuntahan to. So you should be able to clearly communicate that in light of established knowledge, hindi po actionable itong topic na to. Therefore, we refined it kasi ito po, mas impactful itong topic na to kasi this is the reason A, B, C, and D. So dapat pag in-approach nyo yun, dapat handa kayo. May talking points agad kayo. Ito, this, and that. Kasi you know, if your stakeholder or your committee is logical, they would embrace it. They would even appreciate it.
Yeah. And this is a call to appeal for our teachers here na to be flexible then when these things come up kasi yun nga yung pinakita ni Doc Jeff kanina, that the research process is cyclical. So at any point during the research, marami kang mga unforeseen na circumstances na pwedeng magbago dun sa flow ng research. So I hope that our teachers will cater to those unforeseen circumstances.
Kasi nung una, meron kang question, yung scientific question mo, after nag-lit research ka, nag-lit review ka, nagbago yung question mo. So magbabago talaga yung hypothesis mo.
And if I can share with you po, ito, hindi naman ako bibigyan ng specific, no? This is a recent experience sa trabaho ko. This happened last year. I was asked to lead a technology development project on its 11th year. And it was only 3 months away from getting commercialized. So meaning, may mga konti na lang kami tatapusin, dapat i-commercialize na yung technology. Pagpasok ko dun, and when I looked at the data, I recognized that there was something wrong. And I did like some further research, and upon studying the literature, ang conclusion was the molecule that was developed should not have been progressed 11 years ago. So imagine niyo po yun. Daang milyong piso po ang nagasta doon sa project na yun sa loob ng 11 taon. Pero dahil hindi po, ito mga scientists na to, sasabihin ko sa inyo, hindi nila ginawa yung thorough literature research, hindi nila discover na yung ginawa nilang molecule, hindi dapat pala yun yung ginamit. Ito po yung pinaka-practical na example na pwede kong mabigay sa inyo, na yung mga tao ay masyadong nag-stick doon sa research question na ginawa nila nung kasimula-simulaan, na in-ignore nila yung review of literature. So yun po, yung kapalit ng hindi nila pagbabasa ay daang milyong nasayang. Ganun po
Because
yun.
nag-stick sila sa hypothesis nila.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Masyado silang na-obsessed dun sa, ito yung question, ito yung topic na i-establish ko. So, ilan po yun? 11 taon to. Lagpas 30 scientists yung dinaanan. Pero yung kasimula-simulaan na review of literature, hindi nagawa ng maayos, ganun po kalaki yung nasasayang.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Ganun po. So, kaya po, mga guro, kayo po yung tinatarget namin dito kasi ang dami din po natin kailangang baliin. Na hindi naman po ito local na issue sa basic education sector. Gaya po na sinabi ko, ako po sa ginagawa ko as a practicing scientist and innovator, it happens at all levels. Ayun po. So sana po meron kayong mga napupulot na mga gagawin po talaga natin tong practical. Ayan. Alright. So isa pang gusto ko pong i-share sa inyo na importance ng literature is when you are justifying your research project. Ito very useful sa proposal when you're writing the proposal. Why should we fund your project? Why are you trying to do this? So yung research, yung review of literature is very important in establishing why your research is important. So you have to elaborate on your hypothesis and objectives. So dito sa section na to ng proposal, you have to again, establish yung conventional wisdom. Ano na ba yung nagawa? And highlight kung ano yung bagong i-offer mo through this research. So technically, kaparehas lang din po noong format nung ginawa ko sa conceptual framework. Yan lang din po yan. So you are using the literature to establish kung ano yung bago sa ginagawa mo. Kung bakit mahalaga yung ginagawa mo. Okay? Okay, so mag-skip lang ako ng isang slide kasi gusto kong pumunta na dun sa example. So an example dun sa gold nanoparticle example natin is, okay, if you're writing up a proposal, you're gonna say this study aims to develop size uniform gold nanoparticles, blah, blah, blah. But then yung review of literature is conventional wisdom in the study of this. Mention studies that suggest that your hypothesis makes sense. So ganun yun. Dapat supportado din siya ng study ng iba and then highlight the challenges. So kapag ganyan po yung format ninyo, ganyan yung approach nyo, andali nyo na sa dulo na nasabihin yung hypothesis nyo. At pag binasa na yan ng readers nyo na, ay, it makes sense. Ay, oo, ay, ginawa na nitong gantong group. So, okay, nakita niya daw sa web. So kapag ganyan po yung approach nyo sa pagsusulat ng inyong justification of the study, kapag coherent yung flow, magme-make sense yung hypothesis nyo na, ay, naniniwala ako. Parang pinagtitiwalaan ko yung approach na kasi he did his homework. They did their homework. Inaral nila kung ano yung nagawa na, ano yung hindi pa nagagawa, and why their proposed solution makes sense. Yun po. Again, logic po. Actually po, itong mga ganito, review of literature at saka yung pag-come up ng justification, para lang din po kayo nakikipagchismisan dito. Yung gusto nyong maganda yung flow ng sinasabi nyo. Yan. So, ganun
May
yung
kwento.
Yan, may kwento. Actually, yan po lahat kwento. Yung review of literature is to come up with a story. Lalong-lalo na kapag nasa proposal stage ka kasi wala ka pang resulta mo. So, ang gagamitin mo to convince people that what you're doing is important is the set of information that you get from others.
Kwento
Ganun.
lang talaga.
Yan.
Kwento mo, bakit ganito, ganyan, hanggang state of the art. Ano ngayon ang gusto mong gawin?
Yes. And in the process, you're going to be challenging the state of the art. Kasi doon nyo po din marirealize na pag binasa niyo yung state of the art na ay may kulang pa din naman sila. Yun yung pinakamaganda pero hindi pa kompleto. Ganyan. Hindi pa sila perfect, ganyan. So ang ipapromise sa kanila, pag ginawa ko to, magiging closer to perfection na yung field, parang ganyan. You always have to offer improvement or better understanding of your chosen research topic. Okay. All right. So, at this point, saktong-sakto. Natapos ako dun sa part ko. Meron po kami mga i-offer sa inyo na mga videos that you can watch sa Phil's I Hub on how to ideate. Siguro po. And then I will be sharing the slides kasi meron po ako dito mga appendices that you can actually use as well on how to facilitate ideation. So isasend na lang po namin yung slides sa inyo via email. Okay? Alright. So at this point, saktong-sakto, 11:04, medyo sumobra ako ng 4 minutes. Ibibigay po natin ng floor kay JP. JP, you decide if you would like for us to gusto mo bang i-play natin yung recorded video or
No, I'll share my PowerPoint on my end. Can you make me co-host first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to do that. All right. And then, ayan po. Ano tayo? Kung after po nitong presentation ni JP, gusto niyo pong i-extend ng konti pa yung ating Q&A, we'd be happy to answer questions that you may have.
Yeah, and feel free to grab a bite or two or while watching the webinar kasi tanghali na po sa Pilipinas. So.
Ay nga pala, sagutin ko lang itong isang tanong na to. Is it necessary to state both the null and alternative hypothesis in the study? Yes. That is totally okay.
Yeah. So I will discuss it here actually dito sa experimental design part. So thank you, Doc Jeff. And I don't have a title slide for an introduction slide for myself, but I'll just quickly introduce myself here. So my name is JP Onya. I'm a Filipino scientist based here in Finland right now. I'm working for a research facility here in Finland in the bandang norte na po, so pa North Pole na ako. But
Santa Claus.
Yeah. So I'm also a chemist by training. I graduated from UPLB and I did my master's here in Europe, first in Estonia and then in Finland, and then I did my PhD. I'm still finishing my PhD, but I'm currently working right now. And my research interests include catalysis, specifically electrocatalysis, and anything electrochemistry. I'm designing sensors right now, electrochemical sensors for different metals and biological molecules. So I'm here today to discuss the experimental design part, and marami na tayong nakuha na insights from Doc Jeff,
about ideation and literature review. And at this point, probably may idea na tayo on how to come up with a sound research question sa kung ano yung gusto nating talakayin or tuklasin dun sa ating research project, and specifically state what our research objectives are. And for the experimental design, this is very important part of the research process, because your research question and research objective may be very very sound and perfectly sounding, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So a lot of great ideas fail into execution dahil nga yung experimental design is not really fit or may mga lacking aspects dun sa experimentation. So that's what we're going to tackle today. So, but before I move on discussing about experimental design further, I'd just like to introduce the different types of quantitative research. And at this webinar, so naka-focus lang po muna tayo sa quantitative research. There's also qualitative research, which is done in the humanities, arts, humanities and social sciences. So iba pong realm yon ng research. It's qualitative. But what we are dealing here is numbers, numerical values. That's why it's quantitative research. So there are 4 common types of quantitative research. One is descriptive research, which merely describes conditions and characteristics of a certain population or a sample of that population. So take, for example, the population of students in the Philippines, take a subset of that and describe the statistics from that subset. So it merely describes, so dito pumapasok yung tinatawag na descriptive statistics, mean, median, mode ng iyong data. So sabihin natin na parang it's a very simple type of research, but it is very important because it lays the ground of what is the status quo of a certain problem. So wag po nating mamaliin yung descriptive research kasi it builds the foundation on the actual problem that we need to solve. There's also correlational research, which identifies a relationship between 2 or more variables without manipulating them. So you have a set of, let's say 2 sets of data, and you want to know if there is correlation or relationship between those variables. So this is what correlational research is for. But at this point, wala po tayong ni-introduce na control or treatments between sets of data. So we're just trying to see if there's correlation or relationship between the 2. Let's say, for example, the time spent by students on social media versus their mathematical test scores. So let's try to see if there is correlation between these 2, and there are many tools to study that, but we didn't introduce any control or manipulation on our subject in this study. So dito po, yung experimental research is what we're gonna talk about today, and it's the type of quantitative research that determines causal relationship. So cause and effect po yung dinidiscuss natin dito. So you have independent variables which you manipulate or control and measure the outcome on the dependent variable. So yun po yung i-discuss natin today. And there's also another type of quantitative research, the quasi-experimental research. It also investigates causal relationship, but there is no random assignment on the experimental subjects. This is the case when the subjects are pre-existing already. So let's take, for example, the same example na you're trying to see the test scores of students in a certain school versus those from another school. and correlate that with the time spent on social media. And let's see if there is a causal relationship. Let's say if we try to implement like a certain time for social media, let's say, okay, magbabad kayo ng 3 oras dyan, and then let's see what your test scores will be. Or let's say, for example, if you're trying to test the efficacy of a certain teaching method, so you implement that teaching method to different sets of students, let's say from one school to another, and they're already existing, and you did not randomly assign the subjects to those groups. So ang nature po nung research na yun is quasi-experimental, because you didn't choose among yourself, you didn't do randomization on the subject, on the composition of the groups. So they're existing already. Okay. But what we're going to talk about today is experimental research. And the experimental design is the process of organizing the experiments to ensure that the right amount and type of data is available to answer the research question as clearly and as efficiently as possible. So we have already developed a research question and laid out our research objectives. Now, that experimental design will try to answer and try to cater each one of those research objectives as clearly and as efficiently as possible. So I've written here that the right amount and type of data, because we are limited by our resources, our time, and of course budget. So we try to make do with what we have, so with our limited resources. So I summarize this in this diagram. So yun nga po, we have the research question, the research aim and objectives, and your experimental design is your actual tool. So parang there's a task and you need a tool, let's say martilyo or wrench. So yun yung tool mo to tackle your research aim and objectives point by point. Okay. So in science investigatory projects or capstone projects in universities and high schools, the experimental design normally states what methodologies were chosen and explain why these choices were made. So sometimes explicitly they will state this in the final paper kung bakit yung methodologies yung napili, and ano yung research question that they're trying to address. And they should be when we're writing the methodology part, so sasabihin ng mga teachers that try to be as detailed as possible. And that's because the experimental methodology must be descriptive enough to be reproduced and verified by another group of people or another person, another experimenter. So sa ating mga teachers, let us train our students to be really detailed on the methodology part. Kung ano yung ginawa natin, what is the room temperature, the humidity in the room where the experiment was tested, para we have a basis for any discrepancies or any abnormal results kapag reproduce yung ating experiments by another set of people or another location. So the experimental design in SIP has these steps involved. So yun na nga po, we define our research question and variables, and we write down our hypothesis. So yung sa tinatanong kanina, kailangan ba explicitly sinasabi yung hypothesis? Sometimes hindi explicitly, but it's somehow expressed in the introduction implicitly, na parang ito yung tinitest natin, and ito yung mga variables na tinitingnan. Okay? And then you design your experimental treatments. So dito ka na magde-determine what levels of the treatment you want to implement on your study. And of course, the final step in experimental design is the execution or the actual measurements and data collection. So these steps actually constitute a controlled, what's called a controlled experiment. And this should be systematically and accurately manipulate the independent variables. Let's say yung dosage ng active ingredient, the temperature of the reaction, let's say implemented, and the pH of the reaction solution, for example. And precisely measure the dependent variables kasi pag minsan dito tayo nagkakamali dun sa pag-measure ng mga qualities. Let's say pH or temperature, mali yung thermometer na ginamit, mali yung instrument or the instrument is faulty. So we should give provision to precisely collect the data or measure the data from our subjects and control any potential source of interferences, because this may not be very apparent, but there might be what is called confounding variables na pwedeng makaapekto ng ating mga resulta, because interferences are always there. That's why meron tayong systematic and random errors na tinatawag, but we try as much as possible to control the effects of these interferences. And let me just stop sharing and give an example. I just found this in the web. This is a study published in PubliScience. I think this is a local journal in the Western Visayas. So marami pong sources of articles na free out there in the Philippines. So kung gusto po nating mag-check, so there's PubliScience, there's the Philippine Journal of Science. Just to contextualize our research, kung para po makita natin what are the ongoing research in our areas. For example, this one is in Western Visayas in Iloilo. Na napakasimpleng experiment lang po. This is done by high school students, and they are trying to see if there is an effect of this powdered chicken eggshells as soil additive on the growth of Vignia radiata. So very sophisticated po, pero munggo lang po ito, mung bean plant. So they are insinuating that the calcium in the chicken eggshells will have an effect on the growth of the vegetative growth of the mung bean plant. And they have set this out. They stated this in the introduction. So they have narrowed down their research objectives. So very simple lang na i-measure yung stalk length and the root length of the plant as a function of the composition of the soil, meaning to say the amount of the eggshells that they have incorporated in the soil. So measure the stalk length, the root, and then ito po yung method. So very simple lang din. They treated the soil samples with different concentrations and then administered the same amount of water to all the subjects. And then after 30 days, chinek po nila yung mga measurements. Doon sila nag-measure. I think they have measured in between days. Yeah, 10 days, 20 days, 30 days. So, ayan po. Makikita natin kung ano yung, let us try to develop the habit of reading journal articles to have an idea on how this is done at the national level or yung professional level, para ma-expose din po yung mga students natin on the language of how scientific articles are written. So yung level of detail And of course, in terms of experimental methodology, there is a considerate amount of detail that you can put there. So hindi naman kailangan lahat, but enough detail so that it can be reproducible or can be repeated by another person or group. So ang kanilang measurement ay ginawa using an app. So this is not a standard instrument. So, but they also use the vernier caliper. But somehow when we're using non-standard methods for measurement, somehow kailangan nating i-validate or try to cross-check that with standard instrument or samples if available. Probably itong mga estudyante na to will just really techy. That's why they use their phone to measure those. But well, probably a simple ruler or meter would do the job. Yeah. So this is just one example on how the experimental methodology is configured. So let me just go back to my slide. Yeah, so when we're talking about experimental design, there are hard skills that can be developed or must be developed in order to come up with a very sound and fit for purpose experimental design. And three of those is the design of experiments, the experimental control, and the analytical techniques. So yung analytical techniques, sinabi ko lang na hard skill siya kasi kapag nakapili na tayo ng analytical method, let's say titration, pH measurements, or let's say metal analysis by some standard methods. So it goes to say na ituturo natin sa mga estudyante yun. So they must be able to do them by themselves and understand the theory behind that analytical technique on how it's able to measure that specific trait or that specific quality of the sample. So automatic na po yun sa mga estudyante natin to learn these analytical techniques, and I hope that our teachers will guide them through it, or at least find an expert on the field of these analytical techniques para po maituro yung standard methods sa mga estudyante natin, and inculcate and try to establish in them na we always need to use standard methods as much as possible, because standard methods are reliable and valid. So I also have here a design of experiments and experimental control, which I will discuss in detail. So ito pong design of experiments is a research strategy invented by Ronald Fisher in 1958, and Doc Jeff already discussed this in one of our webinars in Research University. But this is a very useful tool para po ma-optimize natin yung mga resources natin. So it involves a systematic planning prior to conducting an experimental campaign or experimental study. And this aims to study as many data points from a minimum number of experiments. So we try to optimize the number of experiments in order to get as much data points or get as much information with a limited number of experiments. Kasi most of the time we are limited by our budget or time, kasi nga yung research project ng mga estudyante ay limited lang within 1 year yung experimentation. So that's why they really need to finish within a certain time frame. And yeah, of course, these are very crucial kapag limited po yung budget natin and kailangan natin magtipid. Ayan. So the way this design of experiments work is we try to set bookend values to our different experimental variables. So in this case, I'm just giving this example on the preparation of gold nanoparticles using different experimental conditions. Bakit nakaano yung kamay ko? Ayan, so we have different variables.
That we have.
The precursor or the reagents here, when we're trying to synthesize gold nanoparticles, you have a precursor. So this is this gold precursor over here, and then our reductant. So medyo nagpapaka-hardcore na tayo. This is the chemicals part, the concentration of the chemicals, the temperature of the reaction, and the pH. So you have three variables. So what we try to do when we carry out design of experiments is that we take bookend values from each of those variables. So let's say the concentration ratio, lowest to highest is 0.5 to 2.5. So nandito po yan. So this is the concentration ratio. And then you have the temperature axis, right, or right over here. And then the pH axis on that side. Yeah, the z-axis. Yeah, 4 versus 9. So you have three variables, and then you take the lowest and the highest value for each of those set of conditions. So you have a total of 8 experiments here if we do like the combination of those three variables. So you carry out those 8 experiments and try to see which experimental condition will give the highest yield. So in this case, itong condition na to, this condition B, gave the highest yield of 75%. So already we have an idea on what the ideal experimental conditions will be when we're trying to come up with as much high yield of gold nanoparticles. So magpe-play around na lang po tayo dito sa experimental values na to. So, and at this point, we've already narrowed down the number of our experiments. If we try to do the experiment with different temperatures and concentrations, we can go on and perform a lot of experiments, while in fact we can just focus our resources along this ideal conditions. So in that way, we have already narrowed down and cut our time for experiments and cut the costs for reagents and instruments for this experiment. So ganun lang po ginagawa yung design of experiments. And if you want to learn more on how this is done, how this is implemented in your research studies, then you can probably visit our website and just type in design of experiments there. So Doc Jeff did a very nice job in explaining this. I can probably, he can probably explain this better. Yeah.
Laura, actually, I would just like to build on what JP said. So he
Yeah.
raised a very important point po that ito, consider nyo po to sa Pilipinas kasi sinabi nga po ni JP, you can come up with the most elaborate plan with, di ba, and typically kasi ang ginagawa po natin, napaka-linear ng approach. Two variables at a time ang ina-explore nyo. One dependent and one independent variable. Pero kapag po ang study nyo ay merong 3, 4 o 5 magkakaibang variables na naaaralin nyo, unang-una po, kung kulang kayo sa oras at kung kulang kayo sa gamit, You don't have to work all too hard and exhaust or deplete your resources. Sometimes you just have to work smart and extrapolate. And this is what JP just taught you is a way to accelerate, like your learning in this space. And ang nangyayari po kasi dito is, for example, out of 8 experiments, kung nakita mo na the most important variables are variables A and B, then pwede ka namang mag-focus doon. Pwede mong i-refine yun to better understand it.
Yes, so this is a very important tool for practicality's sake. Okay. And another hard skill. So we go back to the hard skills that we can develop for experimental design is experimental control. And this is because our experimental design must ensure that the measurements or the data that we collect are reliable and valid to a certain extent. I say at a certain extent because we are limited, of course, by our resources and just dive deep, go to a certain depth of experimentation on a certain research question. So kung limited po tayo sa budget, hindi natin ma-afford yung mga sophisticated equipment. So we do like in-house developed methods. So we try to aim at least so that our measurements and our data are reliable and valid, and minimizing the errors or the bias in the experiments. So there are 2 metrics here: the reliability and the validity of the experiments. And reliability is the measure for reliability is found on the reproducibility of a certain analytical method implemented. So yung results ng experiments natin must be reproducible in order to be deemed reliable. So kung inulit ito ng iba pang grupo or ng iba pang estudyante the year after, doon mapuprove na reliable yung ating method or analytical technique na ginamit. And also the methods, the methodology should be valid. And how do we ensure that the methodology is valid? We use validated or standard methods. Let's say when we're doing meta-analysis, so ang standard method po dyan usually is what is called atomic absorption spectroscopy or AAS, or ICP, inductively coupled plasma spectroscopy. These are already sophisticated equipment, sophisticated instrumentation na pwede nating i-employ so that we know that these are valid, and whenever methods are valid, we know that they are reliable. So it comes hand in hand. So pag valid po yung methods natin, you know that it's reliable, but it's not the other way around. Parang hindi ibig sabihin na yung in-house developed method natin for meta-analysis, just because it's reliable, nare-reproduce natin yung results, it means that it's valid. It doesn't follow. But whenever we use standard methods, we are sure that the results are reliable and valid as well. And another aspect of experimental control is that subjects must be randomized into treatment groups. Kasi nga po, we are trying to minimize the errors or the bias in our experiments. So dito na po pumapasok yung bias ng experimenter or bias ng methodology itself. When you're trying to do calibration from the lowest concentration to the highest concentration, in that manner, from lowest to high, you already introduce a bias on the actual measurement. So that's why randomization is important. Let's say we subject we control our subjects or randomize our subjects into the treatment groups para po ma-minimize yung errors and bias. So, and of course, a control group must be maintained. Yung control group po is the group that did not receive any treatment or manipulation or control in the treatments. So ito yung untreated sample natin. So let me just come back to my example over here. Ayan po. So, sinasabi po nila dito na yung blocking of the plants were, dito pa rin po tayo sa eggshell example. They treated the plants with different concentrations of the chicken eggshells, but they randomized the blocking of the plants every day. Kasi nga po, yung effect ng sunlight might introduce a bias on the plants. Kasi nga po baka yung isang group ang mas naaarawan kaysa doon sa kapila. So we try to randomize the samples so that they receive an unbiased amount of let's say a certain confounding variable. Confounding variable na po ito kasi di naman nila tinalakay yung effect ng sunlight dun sa growth ng plants. It's just the amount of this active ingredient. So ganun po yung pag-carry out ng randomization, and pumapasok na din po dito yung randomized block approach ng mga experiments natin, where we try to randomize our subjects into treatment groups, and we discussed that thoroughly during the design of experiments webinar in the Research University. I will send the link after the webinar here. So I want to stress again that control group must be maintained at all times, kasi ang ganda-ganda nung experimentation, pagdating sa defense, wala palang control. So that actually happened in my experience. So parang ang ganda-ganda nung discussion, but then nakita nung reviewer, examiner, wala kang control. So ulit tayo. So that's why it's really important that we devote an ample amount of time towards the development of a sound experimental design, kasi nga po we may suffer in the end.
And actually matatawag ko si JP, ang tawagan po namin ni JP because we've been friends for how long, JP? More than about 20 years.
I don't know, 20 years.
About 20 years. Anyways, matatawag ko siyang Dong. Anyways. Force of habit. Pero singitan na natin to ng chikahan. Kasi po, importance of control experiments. Magkaiba po yan, may negative and positive control. Why is this very important? We have the tendency to not control things when the result is positive. Meaning, yung ini-expect natin nakukuha natin.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as researchers, let's make it a practice that when something is working out well, is that real? Kasi ang sinabi niya, yes. Yes, ang sinabi niya po ni JP, nangyayari na ang ganda-ganda ng resulta mo, pero if you are not really able to establish or you establish the confidence that that is not a result of something that is interfering in your experiments, baka po ang mangyayari sa dulo ay mali pa yung resulta.
Mm-hmm.
At napakasakit pong mangyari yan sa dulo na ng thesis pag patapos na kayo.
Isang taon na ang nangyari.
At ma-extend kayo.
Hindi ka gagraduate.
Yeah. Doon sa experience namin, parang okay, ang taas-taas ng concentration na nakuha nila. Yung pala, yung temperature ng hot plate hindi
Yes.
equal. So mas mataas yung temperature dun sa likod. So so those are unforeseen confounding variables na tinatawag. Kaya we
I
really
also
have to
I also had a recent experience there. Ang nangyari was I took over a project and I couldn't reproduce the result. So I had to do things, I had to rerun the experiment 3 times and I kept getting the same outcome. And then yung taong gumawa po ng experiment medyo wala na siya dun sa group namin. So when we did some further digging from like of what they did 3 or 4 years ago, it turns out magkaiba yung mga hot plate na ginamit, magkaiba yung mga glassware na ginamit, like certain things that were not documented and variables that could really impact the outcome. Dong, sagutin ko lang itong isang tanong dito. Sir Zestoni, meron po kaming webinar from the Institute of Statistics in UP. They actually came up, kay Professor Lara, it's about experimental design. She discussed CRD and RCBD.
Yeah.
Puntahan niyo po yun doon.
Yeah, the statistical treatment of data. So ayun po, very detailed po yung discussion ni Ma'am Lara from that webinar. So you can just search that from our website. Okay. So ito, papasok na po tayo dito so we're done with the hard skills. And I would just like to point out something here that when we are trying to develop research methods for our project, ang first option po natin should be what is already available. When we're already pressed for time and resources, so maybe it's instructive to first look for what is available within our school. If some instrumental methods has already been done in our university, so probably try to work on that first. Kasi chances are, kung yung experiment na yun ay ginawa na sa university nyo, yung tools or yung instrument might still be available. The technician might still be there to help you, and you can still consult the students kung he's just like within the area. So doon po tayo muna magsimula para hindi tayo nahihirapan, because as tempting as it is to use sophisticated methods, pag minsan yun po yung nagiging bottleneck ng research natin. So let's try to work within our means and try to see kung yung method na yun ay nagawa na ba before by some students. So we go to the library and search our thesis there, our databases there for available methods within our institution. So that's our, let's say, first line of thinking when it comes to finding research methods for our project. And the second option would be find a related research within the locality or nearby areas. Let's say taga San Pablo kayo, let's say that study was done in UPLB, so probably you can contact somebody from UPLB if this analytical method is available. But when you approach professors or teachers in another area, so come up with a plan. So show them what you have in mind, the research project, the research aims and objectives, and what you are using that specific analytical method for. So kailangan ipakita nyo sa kanila na hindi masasayang yung efforts nila when they're trying to loan or teach that method to you, kung available dun sa institution na yun. So pwede natin itap yung local resources natin in that way when we are trying to find applicable research methods. Kasi nga po, as much as possible, we try to implement standard methods, but they are not always available. So we can first try these two approaches, and when push comes to shove, then I think third example is to search the internet for alternative methods for analysis. And sometimes this may be applicable to our project. Sometimes meron yung mga apps sa phone that where your phone could be can serve as a spectrophotometer, trying to see like color changes kung colorimetric lang naman yung ating colorimetric lang naman yung experiment natin. We don't need UV-Vis for that. So kung hindi available ang UV-Vis spectroscopy, then probably we can do this ad hoc methods or in-house developed methods for our analysis. Kasi nga po, we're really pressed by time and can justify this in the final manuscript na ito po yung implement natin. But I would just like to point out that when we're using this alternative methods or in-house developed methods, let's try to associate that with the standard methods by using like known standard materials and compare the response between a standard method and your validated method, tinatawag. So it's really important that our methods are traceable to standard methods kasi that spells the reliability and the applicability of your method to a larger scale or of applications na pwede siyang i-reproduce by another group and can be validated. I can be validated later on ng ibang tao.
Mm.
Okay.
Meron akong example dyan, JP.
Yes, Tita, please.
Yung sinabi mo na kailangan kung kulang ka dun sa materials na hindi mo makikita, titingnan mo yung local, kung anong available sa local, di ba? So, meron kaming dito sa lab namin, yung media namin na nilalagyan namin ng carnation leaf para mag-produce ng structure yung fusarium na fungus. Tapos, hindi na available ang carnation leaf kasi ang sterilization niya, irradiation. So, hindi kami pwede sa lab. So, ang literature review, so ang fusarium, nagkukos ng disease sa banana, pineapple, ganyan. So, sabi ko, baka pwede naman ang banana leaf. Kasi ang carnation, pwede rin siya doon nagpo-produce kasi doon siya parang yun ang natural environment niya. Pero kung nagkukos siya ng disease sa banana, di sabi ko, gumamit kaya tayo ng banana leaf. So, bumili ako ng banana leaf sa Asian market. Tapos ginamit namin yon. So, nag-produce nga siya ng structures. So, meron kaming pampalit dun sa yung mga ganyang experiment. So, ititingnan mo kung anong pwede at saka bakit, yung anong rational nun kung bakit ginawa yung carnation. So, titingin ka, baka meron namang alternatives.
Yeah.
Ganyan. Oo.
And that's creativity, right there.
Yeah.
And resourcefulness. Kasi nga,
at saka,
yun yung
review. Kasi kung hindi mo alam na nag-cause yan ng disease doon, hindi siya tutubo doon sa banana leaf.
Yeah. And
Kuya Jeff, go.
I was just gonna say like very quickly. So, ang ginagawa po namin ngayon ni JP is more on mentorship po of teachers. But if you would like to consume yung sobrang detailed po na trainings, inilagay ko po lahat ng links sa lahat ng steps. Mga mukha rin po namin yung makikita. And we invite experts from different fields po, like statisticians, para po talaga makuha niya yung content. And then we also highly encourage for you to share them with your students. Yan po ay freely accessible. Hindi po kami kumikita dyan. So, gusto lang po namin talaga na yung tinuturo namin sa inyo as teachers, kumonekta po talaga sa mga estudyante.
Meron akong comment, Jeff, doon sa hypothesis.
Apo.
Yung hypothesis talaga, baka yung hindi masyadong clear sa iba. So, nung process of inquiry, nakikita mo, nag-observe ka, meron ka ngayong question. So, yun ang scientific question mo.
Yes.
Tapos, nag-lit review ka. So, nakikita mo lahat ng information tungkol doon sa topic na interested ka. So, yung question mo, based doon sa literature review mo, gagawa ka ngayon ng answer doon sa question mo. So, yun ang magiging, yung answer mo, yun yung statement na yun yung hypothesis mo.
So you synthesize an idea out of
What you have
established.
read. Yeah.
Yes, so educated guess. So ngayon, yung answer dun sa question mo, ngayon yun ang gagawan mo ng design, experimental design, para ma-answer mo, para ma-prove mo tama ba yung question, tama ba yung answer mo?
Yep.
O hindi. So ganun lang yun kasimple.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is really the core of the scientific method.
So kung nakita nyo kanina, yung diniscuss ni Mama Connie, the front end of that was choosing a topic, reading up the literature, and nandito nakukonekta yun dun sa ginagawa ni JP na how you design your experiments to answer your research questions. So again, at the end of the day po, magkakadugsong-dugsong to. So kung yung experience nyo po, nung nag-research kayo, nung nag-aaral pa kayo, or kung nag-aaral pa kayo ngayon, kung feeling nyo po disjointed or disconnected yung ginagawa nyo sa review of literature dun sa pagplano nyo ng experiments, baka po medyo meron tayong kailangang adjustments na gawin. Kasi technically, all these steps should be coherent. Meaning,
Exactly.
natural yung flow. Magkakakonekta po yan. You're building something. Ayan. Alright?
At
Yeah,
saka
so
yung title ng research nyo, temporary, tentative lang yon. At
Exactly.
tsaka ka lang talaga magkakaroon ng yung final na title ng
Actually, it's a common practice among researchers to come up with the title at the end na eh.
Actually, I would like to raise that point. I figured out but the title of my PhD dissertation was the last thing to be figured out.
Exactly.
After 4 years of doing it. Ayan. So siguro po kung meron dito mga research advisors, huwag po tayong fixated sa title. Kasi po, ultimately the outcome will dictate the title. It's the determinant of your title. It's the
Ano yung experimental design? Kasi if-fit nyo sa title
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Medyo that's actually, and eto I'm gonna say this, that's doing science backward. Yung pupersahin mo, walang sense yung results kasi hindi siya nag-fit dun sa idea ko. Parang medyo may mali po yata kapag gano'n. All right.
Yeah. So try to reverse engineer the research process to come up with a coherent and within the context approach.
And to be honest po, okay, based on experience, I think all of us three here can relate. When you really do research as a career, most of the time, pag patapos mo na yung project, unrecognizable na siya. From
what you have envisioned. Yeah.
It evolves. Like only about like 10% of what you originally thought would be the answer is the actual answer.
Yeah.
So may nagsabi po, rigid yung ibang advisors, medyo baguhin po natin yan. So siguro po medyo mahirap baguhin na yung nakasanayan nila. But if you become the advisor yourself, alam mo na kung ano yung practice na hindi mo mamanahin.
Pwede naman may tentative title eh.
Yes, and that's the operative term. It should be tentative. And siguro po, everyone can relate if advisors are rigid, if they're too imposing and inflexible, that also takes away the fun from doing the research. Working title, I like the term working title, but not the final title.
Exactly.
All right.
So, I'm just gonna touch on the soft skills. So ito medyo minor na siya, pero these are very important skills that we can develop among our students. So when we're trying to come up with a sound experimental design, so inevitably, madedevelop yung analytical skills ng mga estudyante because they're trying to retrofit or try to come up with a fit-for-purpose experimental design. Yun nga, para ma-answer yung ating mga research question because it has to be tailored fit for the research question at hand. So this involves a lot of logical thinking and decision making that we can develop among our students. Analytical skills and another it's communication skills. When we are trying to sell our ideas to our peers or to our supervisors, or kung humihingi po tayo ng funding based on our research proposal. So yung experimental design will equip our students on how to effectively communicate kung bakit kailangan natin itong mga research, yung mga analytical methods na to. Kasi ito po yung mga research objectives na gusto namin ma-fulfill dun sa aming project. So this will improve not only their verbal and written skills, writing skills, but also their persuasion and presentation skills.
And JP,
Also,
if I may add, yung first two kasi very critical yan. So yung kung pinakita ni JP is analytical skills. So it's not only a matter of like, okay, I'm calculating, ito yung outcome. No. You have to extract the knowledge. Ano ba yung trend? And what does the trend say? If the trend doesn't make sense, then that means baka mali yung hypothesis mo or hindi mo ma-prove given the data. And ang dali kasi kapag yung what you expect you get, that's easy to explain. But if it's the contrary, if it's disproving something, that makes it a bit more difficult, no? And that ties to communication, no? So when you're communicating the outcome of your research, it's easier to discuss or to present what people expect to see. But if you are presenting data contrary to what people expect, then that is a true test of communication. Because you have to be able to get your stakeholders.
You have to be ready with your guns.
You have to convince your audience that this is the result, this is contrary to what you're expecting, but this is why this makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and ito po, gusto kong iklaro, when you do science communication, kasi yung concept pa yata po sa atin ng poster presentation or oral presentation is,
ceremonial.
you go there, magsasalita lang ako and that's it.
Yeah.
Communication is making sure that they agree to what you say. Buy-in is the operative term. Kaya po kayo nagde-defense ng proposal, may defense sa thesis. Hindi lang po yun, you're gonna tell them what you did and what your answers are. You have to convince them that what you're proposing and what you have done are reliable.
Exactly.
May feedback po. It's not only a matter of what you want to say and what you prepared to say. Sabi ni JP, be prepared with all your guns and your weapons kasi when you get interrogated and people are skeptical, you have to convince them using knowledge and data.
Exactly. Yun yung guns and weapons mo eh.
Hindi po natin madadaan sa luha at simangot ang ang defense. Data po ang basihan. Alright, JP.
Solid science. Okay.
Science talaga.
Yes.
So creativity, Kuya Jeff already touched on this because when we're trying to address research gaps with existing analytical methods, doon na po pumapasok yung creativity on how we can come up or synthesize a general picture of the research project using the available tools within our disposal.
And I like the term that you use, JP, general picture. So yung creativity po is not only about coming up with an idea or coming up with question. Creativity in the context of research is also coming up with a data-driven narrative. Again, that's also partly creativity kasi once nakuha mo na yung data, kung hindi mo naman in-analyze at hindi mo naman siya kinonvert into a story that people can learn from?
Wala.
Wala rin. Wala ring essence yung ginawa mo. So in part, creativity is about putting things together to establish something that is logical and that is backed by data. So again, kaya po, tuloy-tuloy yan. Yung ginawa ni JP dito, when you design your experiments, dapat solid yung approach nyo kasi the goal of experimentation is to really prove or disprove your hypothesis.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to achieve is to fulfill your research goals.
Yes.
And the tools at your disposal spells your creativity on the approach that you're gonna employ in experimental design. So an adaptability. So ito very familiar po tayo dito when things don't go our way. There are unexpected challenges and uncertainties. Ayun, madedevelop din po natin sa mga estudyante natin. But firstly, within ourselves, kasi tayo po yung mga research advisors on how we can work around different challenges and difficulties during the experimentation process. So this will help improve our flexibility, resilience, and coping skills. So tied up na din po dun sa creativity.
But
Okay,
that is tied up too with being reading a lot of literature.
Exactly.
Kasi hindi ka magiging creative kung wala kang knowledge.
Wala kang alam.
If you're not, and if you're
Kailangan
not
foundational
open-minded,
din.
yes, and if you're not open-minded, kasi meron din po mga tao, they will keep on reading, but if they don't really entertain other ways of doing things, that's not adaptive, you know. So if something makes sense, be open to it.
Yeah, integration is
Yes.
important. You
Yeah,
read,
That's why
but you have to know, okay, how is this related to other things?
Yes.
So
So you
integration.
have to build on what others did and leverage good tools and practices that other established. Ang essence po kasi ng research ay hindi naman lahat ng kailangan gawin natin ay original at i-claim natin. Ang galing-galing ko, ako yung gumawa niyan lahat. Ay good luck po kung magawa niyo yun, then good. But minsan po hindi siya practical.
yeah.
Diba lagi naman tayong sinasabihan, you have to see the forest for the trees.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the general objective of research is to induce a positive change. Dun po sa
Yes.
kung hindi naman useful yung mga results na natin, so parang wala lang din. So that's why we're working towards a greater good with our research.
Yes.
And then of course, teamwork is there. Ito yung first dab ng mga students into like a project management, right? So and this involves different people with having different backgrounds and different insights or take on a specific problem. And kung ma-harness po natin yung ability ng mga students to voice out their insights freely and without judgment, then we are building up an ideal environment for teamwork na parang everybody's welcome to pitch in their ideas and work on a specific project as a group.
And
Mas
then,
stronger yun. Kasi sabi ni Doc Jeff, merong ibang may special skill sa math, may special
Exactly.
skill sa ganyan. So if you work together,
Yeah.
iba-iba ang specialty mo, very strong ang group.
and there's also
Exactly.
something that I would also like to positively call, not positively, but just to call out. Kasi ito po na-experience ko, no? Ang tendency po kasi ng mga guro, hindi ko naman po nila lahat. Doon sa mga nakita ko lang din po nung okay bata pa. Ang tendency po nila, doon lang nagpipay attention sa matatalino, yung seemingly matatalino. But then you, again, kaya ko po highlight yung kanina yung rehash ni Mama Connie and ni JP was that ang mga tao po, mga estudyante, iba-iba po yan ng skills. So, part of building functional research teams within your classroom is having like is becoming familiar with ano ba yung strengths ng mga student mo. And then you build the team accordingly. Hindi po yung actually mas disadvantage yung lahat yung matatalino pag sasama-samahin mo lang. 'Di ba? Ihalo niyo po yan kasi lahat yan may mga kanya-kanyang ma-offer sa table. And in doing so, you're exposing them to other skills as well. May inspire niyo po yung mga students na they don't have to be an expert in everything. Kasi that's never gonna happen.
No.
Kahit po kami, we're working in the biggest research groups in the world. We never worked on anything by ourselves. We always bring in the right set of talent. I don't have to be an expert in what other people are doing. But you can actually come up with transformative research and development projects by working with a diverse group of people.
Yeah. And that's what I do all the time. So I'm a clinical research person. So usually, ang collaboration ko with doctors, with me, with statisticians, with infectious disease experts, things like that. So hindi ka talaga nag-iisa lagi.
Yes, yes. Mama, may tanong dito na gusto ko lang sagutin kasi this is something that I had to address in my organization. So recently po, I had to transform how we do innovation for 3 businesses and I had to design how the scientists will work. Ito po, if I can estimate, mga 90 scientists po itong, kumbaga mga pusa po na pinastol ko in simple terms. Okay, ang question po, which is better po? To let the students choose their team or it's the research advisor who will arrange the teams? I would suggest the latter. Kasi po, we do have the tendency to work with our friends.
Yes.
And usually our friends are people who think in the actions in the same way that we do. And kapag nag-assemble po tayo ng team, we focus on the skills that we're bringing into the table and that they might not be friends, but you will have the right set of talents needed by the team. That's your first consideration niyo po. And then also, kapag po kasi hindi friends yan, there could be a healthy level of what they call this, exchange rin and opposition. Kasi kailangan nyo din po yun. Hindi po kasi kailangan nyo nasa team, kung ano lang sabihin ng isa, oo na lahat.
Ay, wala mangyayari dyan.
Yes po, the most creative team teams have members in them where they can recalibrate. Ano ba yung assumption mo? If that's your assumption, I can question that. And actually po, the most effective ideation is one wherein the team can actually challenge one another. Yun po ang pinaka-creative na team. Pwede pong mag-push back at i-challenge yung idea ng iba. Kapag po, for example, isang matalino lang at yung matalino lang ang masusunod, usually po, yung quality of
That's a recipe for failure.
Yes. Dapat po, i-encourage nyo ang students nyo to learn how to engage in constructive and friendly and healthy debate. At ito po, aaminin nyo, ang mga teacher sa atin sa Pilipinas, at least based sa experience ko, matanong lang na estudyante, nagtataray na. So, medyo tanggalin po natin yun. So, kapag po tayo kasi if you're someone who gets aggravated when someone challenges you, there's something wrong in that situation. Because if you really are doing research, at isa po sa mga tenets talaga na pag-perform ng research is having an open mind, you should be open to answering questions. You know, you can also push back on the question if you have the right set of information. But if it comes to a point na hindi ka makapag-push back because you don't have anything to back your idea, then that might actually be enough basis for you to consider the other person's perspective. So ganun po yun, you have to have that exchange. That is how you come up with the most creative idea. And to be honest, the most creative ideas are usually coming from teams where people have different perspectives and expertise and they're able to connect the dots.
Yes, so, very healthy discourse.
Yes, kasi yung angulo na tinitingnan nitong expert na to, posibleng iba sa angulo nitong isa, but then the best idea is the combination of their perspectives. So ganun po 'yon. Sa mga guro, wag po kayong rigid, wag po kayong boring. Dapat po okay lang na medyo kung yung tsismisan po na magkakaiba ang version ay natatanggap nyo, ay ganun din po sa ideation. May mga iba-ibang angle po yan. Pero as a teacher, ang role nyo po is to moderate the conversation and to help the students connect the dots. Wag lang po sa chismis, mas lalo po sa research. Ayan.
Ayan. So actually, Doc Jeff, this is my last slide. And I've seen that questions have already piled up in the chat about...
Oo nga, medyo. Alam mo, JP, the research part, the experimental part really resonates well with all of them.
Sorry po kasi masyado akong naging passionate sa pag-discuss, but
no.
there are
And
questions
also,
here.
I think ito kailangan talaga nila to eh. Kasi I mean, I think the ideation part and the review of literature, nagagawa na nila yan, but then really it's yung clear guidance sa experimentation talagang aminin natin kulang. Kasi at the high school level, bihira naman ang may gamit sa lab to practice this. Right? So, siguro po tanong lang po namin, if you, sa inyo po, if you would like to stay on and engage with us, perhaps for a few more minutes of Q&A, we'd be happy to answer questions that you have. And then, siguro po, what we can also do para hindi naman po kayo masobrahan ng gutom or baka po nag-iinit na mga kayo sa upuan nyo, we can also extend the Q&A tomorrow. Kasi medyo maiksi naman po yung session natin bukas from a lecturer's perspective. Ayan. Pero siguro mag-entertain po tayo ng mga questions.
Yeah, because these are some things that I will tackle also tomorrow, like how many number of samples or what statistical data analysis that we're going to use for our experiments. So i-discuss ko po yan bukas. But may tanong po dito on how many samples or trials needed to conduct. Actually, ito naman po ay dictated with our resources din. Kasi pag sinasabi po na kailangan parametric yung mga results natin, ang nire-require po na ay 30 measurements or 30 trials. Pero kung kaya lang po natin ay 3, normally yung yung rule of thumb is to make at least 3 trials. Kasi that way you have a minimum number where you can calculate the standard deviation and the mean or the average. Pero ito po lahat i-discuss ko tomorrow, and also on the statistical test appropriate for our samples. Kasi pag minsan kailangan din nating i-fit yung statistical treatment with the type of data collection that we did. So kailangan tailor fit po yan. Kung parametric or non-parametric.
Gusto ko lang din pong banggitin, medyo nagpaka-modest si JP. Actually, yung master's po ni JP sa Europe is on is it metrology?
Metrology, yeah.
So yung mga statistics,
measurement uncertainty.
Apo, yung mga statistics po yan, binimerienda niya po yan. So kaya po inaalmusal merienda at hapunan niya po yan before siya nag-PhD sa catalysis. So this is the reason why ini-encourage ko po kayo talagang magtanong. Kasi sa totoo lang po yung mga theories, yung mga best practices na binibigay namin sa inyo, you can look them up online sa books, but then yun po talagang pagsagot sa mga practical questions ninyo that really makes this training all that practical. Ayan.
Exactly.
Okay.
Ayan. So, question from Wayne David. Nababasa ko lang siya.
Yes.
I'm having a lot of research proposal from students involving humans as their respondents. What are the possible compromises of these types of research?
Ano po ba to? Qualitative? Or hindi naman po kayo nag-experiment sa tao?
Oo. Siguro kailangan natin i-touch yung ethical research ethics. So that's a topic for another day. But there are many considerations that we need to do when we're doing like probably to mga survey type of research. Yeah.
And most especially po siguro aspects of yung research na mga ganito, meron po kasing sensitivities around personal information.
Yeah. In this age of data privacy and
Yes. So, meron naman pong mga ways around it. Siguro po this is also like, motivation for us to really look for a resource person who could perhaps
Yeah.
train our community on research ethics, most especially po around these sensitivity. So, Sir Wayne, binigyan mo kami ng misyon na hanap kami
Yeah.
ng research
Because
speaker.
there are standards, I'm pretty sure that there are
There
standards
are,
out there.
there are.
Yeah.
Opo.
Yeah.
Kami po ni JP sa
Yeah,
inanimate.
tita, you have...
Kami po ni JP sa inanimate objects. But then si Mama Connie po sa fungi. But then with Mama, siguro baka we might be able to look kasi you guys you work in an area that involves patients.
Yeah,
Clinical
so
trials.
usually we have what we call HIPAA.
Oh
So
yeah.
patients information that we are not supposed to divulge.
Yep.
So usually in my case, so if I have a patient's ID or isolate ID, we de-identify. So nobody can access that number. So it doesn't go, it doesn't get linked to the patient's information.
Oh, so meron pong kumbaga mga established protocols on how.
Meron.
Okay. All right.
So,
Ay,
yeah.
may nag-comment dito, mas sumasakit ang ulo ng teacher sa mga grupong nag-aaway-away. So Sir John Michael, when it comes to ideation po, panoorin niyo po yung webinar namin on brainstorming.
Brainstorming.
Kasi yung sa brainstorming po, there is a systematic way to do it. So meaning, hindi lang po yung pag-ideate ay magtalakan lang kayo diyan. Yung mananalo sa talakan, yun yung idea niya yung gagawin. Yung brainstorming po, there is a way by which you can structure the discussion in such a way that may scoring system na pwedeng bumoto lahat ng estudyante at yung scoring system na yun is based on a clear set of criteria na okay, if this is your idea, ano yung relevance niyan, ano yung practicality, you can set a clear criteria na para maging objective and fair yung process. Ayan. But then in the process of scoring it, doon na nangyayari yung conversation na yung idea ko lamang dito sa aspect na to because of this and that. So ang key lang po dyan is turuan niyo yung mga estudyante niyo that when they engage in debate, dapat yung argument nila should be based on established information, right? Tapos wala pong personalan. Yun din po yung tuturuan natin ng mga estudyante na pwede naman kayong mag-argue, pero wag pe-personalin. Yung hanggang sa topic lang. And po. And if you are able to teach your students to engage in a healthy debate, ang layo po na mararating ng mga yan when it comes to their professional careers. Kasi po, ang sabi nga po sa Hoy Gising, ang pikon ay laging talo.
Yung
Meron
mga
dito
reference
comment,
natin,
Jeff.
1990s na. Diba?
Opo.
Doc Jeff, merong comment si Ma'am Evelyn Moros.
Asan po yung comment ni Ma'am?
Ayan. Binabasa ko nga din, tita eh.
So,
Pakibasa, hindi ko makita.
you are
Sabi niya,
advocating the value of research. Ito ba yun? Yeah.
Opo.
Can our students use UP laboratory for testing? Like lab instrument for extracting mushroom enzymes?
Pakasugurin na tayo ng matagal.
Ito na yung sinasabi nating collaboration. So
exactly.
You go to that institute, ask them if they want to collaborate with you on a project, and then kung may publication, i-include nyo sila or whatever they want. Meron yan silang conditions. So, nasa inyo yan.
Pero, but I think preliminary, tita, parang offer them your research proposal through an email or a certain communication.
Siguro mag-echo lang din po ako ng feedback ng mga kasamahan natin na nasa mga higher education institutions. Kung ano ba yung mga challenges na na-encounter nila before. Kung bakit minsan hindi rin nag-flourish yung ganong approach for collaboration.
Yeah.
Usually po kasi ang challenge, pag nag-approach po sa kanila, hindi talaga klaro kung anong gustong gawin.
Yeah. Or worse, sa kanila humihingi ng idea.
Sa kanila humihingi.
Ganun ba?
Yes.
Yun.
Yes. So ang siguro po for you to successfully forge a relationship with them, you have to do your homework.
Exactly.
Hindi po yung pupunta kayo doon, tas nga kayo pag tinanong kayo, ano pong gusto niyo talagang gawin? Ano po ba, ano po ba ang gusto nating aralin dito? Ano po talaga yung, kasi ang itatanong po talaga nila sa inyo, ano po ba yung kailangan yung gawin? Ano po ba yung matutulong namin?
So, dyan papasok, Jeff, yung hypothesis nyo.
Yes,
Exactly.
hypothesis. And actually, experimental planning. You have to actually
Exactly.
go as far as that. Kung ano man yung kinover namin ni JP sa session na to, hanggang doon sa paggawa nyo ng experimental plan, dapat po baon-baon nyo na yun.
Oo.
Hindi po pwedeng ang baon.
Kumbaga, magpipresent sila ng proposal doon. Ito yung
Yes.
aming gustong gawin. Ito yung aming...
Ang baon po natin ay research proposal, hindi po pangarap. Ayan.
Okay ba, Ma'am
Yeah.
Evelyn?
Actually po, Ma'am Donna, there are some, kasi meron po silang mga extension programs.
Meron.
Meron po sa mga
want
communities.
Yeah, they
Opo.
do.
Pero yun nga po, ang barrier po dyan is kapag pumunta kayo doon na hindi kayo klaro sa intention at kung ano pong hinihingi yung tulong. And then secondly po, yung isa rin pong barrier is, syempre po yung paplanuhin yung experiment is something that would keep the students safe. Yun, safety rin po is also a very important consideration. Kasi syempre po, pag nandun kayo sa university at nag-ooperate po i-implement kayo doon ng experiment at nandun yung estudyante nyo, liability po yun ng university. So
Exactly.
dapat po, na-scope out nyo tong lahat ng considerations na to na dapat po practical yung approach and then naaral nyo po safe ano ba ang magiging ang mga estudyante nyo kapag in-implement na yun doon sa worksite na yun. Kasi pag nandun na kayo sa campus nila, responsibility na nila kayo. Ayan.
Yeah, so there.
Ayan.
Yung po
Okay.
mga questions on statistical treatments, I will tackle them for tomorrow.
And then, ay magsasend lang po ako sa group chat natin ng ng tawag
I'll
dito,
just copy.
attendance form. Opo. Para, and then, bale, ito po, tatapusin po natin to bukas. So, yun pong ating certificate ay ibibigay lang po natin sa, syempre po, sa makakatapos po ng ating courses. So, ito po ay hindi po hulugan.
Installment.
Kalahati lang, hindi po ito installment. Opo, hindi po ito, ano ba yung sa Avon, yung ba yun, yung 2 gigs, 3 gigs, ganyan. So, kung saan na napupunta tong usapan na to.
Yeah, kasi unfair naman din po dun sa mga nag-attend ng both sessions. So,
Ayan.
yeah,
So,
we hope that you stick around until tomorrow.
you really do
to be able
appreciate
to-
your dedication. And then, yun po, hindi po kami ni JP pumunta sa sobrang detalyadong step by step ito yung gagawin nyo kasi meron na po kami mga materials for that. What we decided to focus on and what we really recognize to be of greater value is ito po, conversation na to. Mapag-usapan natin, makita namin ano ba yung pagkakaintindi nyo sa mga bagay-bagay at kung meron po kaming kailangan i-fine-tune or idagdag or ibawas or baliin, gagawin po namin dito. Kaya po, sana po, pag nag-usap-usap po ulit tayo, huwag nyo na pong babanggitin uli sa akin yung 5 years or 10 years lang ang literature kasi 4 na taon na po akong binabangon ko dyan. Lagi ko na po yung naririnig. Tigilan na po natin yan.
Jeff, parang meron silang comment kanina na kung ilan ang pwede. Sa amin kasi, sa akin,
Apo.
pagka tapos na yung experiment ko, when I'm going to write it up, tapos hahanap ako ng journal kung saan ako magsasubmit, doon ko malalaman kung ilan ang required. Kasi minsan, ay nila ng masyadong marami kasi humahaba.
Yes.
So, doon mo malalaman.
Actually ako, Mama, yung approach ko dyan is if yung review ng literature ko, unang-una, nanggaling sa established institutions at sobrang solid nung binigay nilang basis, I don't have to keep looking out for
you already have a basis.
Kasi
solid na yung basis mo eh.
Yung sinabi nila, nag-backtrack na sila.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So sila na lang ang
They did the job for you.
sa site. Oo, they did the job. The
And
job.
actually po, yung review of
Sila na lang sa
literature,
site mo.
opo, and the review of literature, the quality is not based on the number of papers that you read, but it's on the quality of papers that you're using as basis for your claim. Kasi, and also, dito papasok na yun, kung panoorin niyo yung review of literature na webinar namin, kung game of numbers po yan, ang daming predatory dyan na papers.
Ay, nako, sinabi mo.
You also have to learn how to fish out ano ba yung reliable at ano yung
And
hindi.
discern. Yeah.
Ayan. Meron din pong fake news sa ano. Actually, marami.
Merong list yan. Merong list.
Merong listahan ng predatory. So, focus on the quality of yun ng publication. And kailangan po, you also have to get to know who are the people behind the work.
Yeah.
Pwede niyo din po
Make it a habit to search people.
you have to get to know like the leading experts in the field. But then that doesn't mean na sila lang yung sikat, sila lang yung paniniwalaan. Ang ibig sabihin lang po nun is kapag sobrang established na sila dun, then siguro po what comes with reputation is confidence. But meron pa rin po siyang minsan naliligaw ng landas, minsan po may nagkakamali.
Meron akong labs na pag nakita ko yung pangalan nila, meron na kaagad akong kasi minsan haphazard ang ginagawa. So, minsan nasisira ang pangalan nila kasi yung siguro hindi nila sa dami na kasi nila din ginagawa, hindi na nila masyadong napupulis yung mga estudyante nila.
Yes po. Ayan. Alright. So, ay naku, inabot tayo ng 1:30 ng
Meron pa isang comment, Jeff. How about us in elementary? How can we enhance the love of research?
The love of research.
Actually po, alam niyo po, Ma'am Sir Zandy, actually po, kahit pa lang po dun sa experiment, make your experiments enjoyable. But then, I think ang medyo kinukulang po tayong mga guro sa pagtuturo is really to make it clear to them na, oy, itong ginawa mong to, you are trying to understand the problem. O yung ginawa mo na yon, you came up with a logical process of solving the problem. Kapag po kasi hindi aware ang students kung anong ginagawa nila, ang nangyayari lang po, ang view po ng estudyante dyan ay binigyan lang ako ng listahan ng gagawin ko, ginawa ko, and then
yeah. Kaya hindi sila interesado.
Yung higher order thinking skill, hindi nila ma-realize. But make them realize that you came up with their own design. Creative ka. Kapag po meron silang ganong positive feedback, kapag nare-reinforce yung maganda nilang ginagawa, di ba? Siyempre pa mga estudyante, tonto sila pag feeling live, oy, brainy ako dun. Ang galing-galing. Di ba? Gano'n naman yung mentalidad natin mo.
Exactly. Pagbata pa.
Gagawin ko uli yun.
Yeah.
Di ba? So, dapat po, when you see something of beauty or when you see like good work done, you have to speak to it.
Recognize. Yeah.
Kailangan pong gano'n. Kailangan hindi lang yung, kasi po, again, ang tendency, hindi ko po nila lahat, I have to qualify this. Ang tendency po kasi sa atin, at least yung sa naranasan ko, at least, ito, first-hand experience, results-oriented. Pag hindi mo nakuha yung resulta, walang katuturan lahat ng ginawa mo. Mali po yun. Ayan.
Yeah, katulad nga nung nagtanong sa akin, sabi niya, tita, gusto ng teacher ko na i-screen yung isang algae for anti-cancer capability. Sabi ko, anong gusto mong gawin? Hindi rin niya masabi. Anong sabi ng teacher? Hindi ko po alam.
Yun po. So, again, hindi po kailangan umabot sa research. Kailangan po yung appreciation nila ng experiments. So, kaya po ganun yung build up. Scientific method muna, and then experimentation. Kasi isang question, isang process. Ganun muna yun. Tapos kung mapapansin nyo, ang research pinapagawa lang 3rd or 4th year. That's based on the premise na na-practice na nila yung scientific method via experimentation. So kailangan yung scope nila mas lumawak na.
Spread out, yeah.
Yung research, multiple experiments yun.
Kasi Jeff, nung nagturo ako ng cell biology,
Yes.
introduction to cell biology, unang-unang topic, yan, scientific method.
Opo.
Bago
Actually,
sa lahat.
yes, ma'am. Actually, sa Biology 1 laboratory natin, JP, I don't know if you experience the same.
Yeah,
Ang first experiment po namin sa Bio 1 was observation.
Yeah.
always.
Write
Always.
down what you observe. And alam niyo po, kung
Very
marami
critical.
struggle na yung pag sinabing observe, hindi lang ko only lang yung nakita, yun lang yung isusulat. Meron ng interpretation agad, which is wrong.
Mhm.
Wala. In observation lang dapat.
Nakita mong green at tatsulok, yun lang yung isusulat mo. Ganun lang siya. So, di ba nagja-jump na agad sa interpretation. So doon mo nakikita na may breakdown. May breakdown doon sa familiarity nila ng process na akala nila yung observation, may conclusion ka na agad. Di ba? So dyan po papasok yung mga judgmental. Yan. Oo, yung mga nahuhusga ng kapwa. Ayan. Again, kung saan tayo na pupunta para
Kaya bukas, isulat niyo yung mga questions niyo para hindi malimutan.
I took
Para
them down.
bukas.
I took them down. I copied everything, tita. So
Hindi, yung baka may maisip pa sila ngayong gabi. Ay, ngayong araw.
para medyo nag-aalala po ako sa inyo kasi yung mga kapilosopohan ko lang po ang napupulot nyo. Ang dala natin ay research proposal at hindi pangarap. Ayan.
so true.
Hugot yun.
Yeah.
Hindi kasi
So
totoo
true.
naman. Hindi kasi po, I mean, ito po kasi based on conversations ko with some of my friends from UP na nasa iba't ibang institutions na they really wanna help. They
do.
Kasi meron po talagang, lahat ng institution doon, meron silang extension program na ang goal nila is to help out yung mga nasa high school na nag-perform ng research. Pero ang struggle po talaga is they come in unprepared. So, paano po kayo tutulungan kung hindi nila naiintindihan kung paano kayo tutulungan? So, they appreciate the hunger to gain answers and to do research. But then, again, kailangan po klaro and actionable yung idea nyo. Na pagpunta nyo doon, sasabihin nyo po, ito yung kailangan ko sa iyo. Yung parang, gawin niyo po yung parang, siguro bragging rights. Sa pagpunta ko dun sa UP, sinabi ko dun sa scientist nila doon na, ito yung kailangan kong gawin mo para sa akin. Ganyan. Utusan nyo sila. Ganyan. Alright.
Pero Jeff, meron silang, can we send our questions through Gmail? Hindi.
Yeah,
Bukas, itanong nyo bukas. Isulat nyo ngayon para hindi makalimutan.
May question din po kasi mama doon sa attendance form.
Ganun ba?
They can ask
Okay.
their questions for tomorrow in advance. Yun po. I mean, if you hindi naman po siya requirement, para lang din po makita namin ni JP at mapag-isipan rin namin kung paano namin sasagutin.
Okay.
And we might be able to also like customize the content or make adjustments as needed para po masigurado na. Ito po yung design thinking na sinasabi ko, yung tatanungin muna kayo bago kami gagawa ng content kasi ayaw din po namin yung pupunta kami dito, papasok kayo sa seminar, tas feeling namin, alam namin yung kailangan nyo. So kaya po nagtatanong din po muna kami para po sigurado namin mahihit namin yung mga
customer-oriented.
Yung mga reklamo niyo po sa buhay. Ayan. Opo. Ayan, ano yun po natin yan. Pero yun po sinabi ni ma'am, I can relate. Yung mga students niya, may explanation agad. Hindi pa nakakapag-experiment. So dyan po, again, nangyayari po yan kasi may breakdown sa pagkaturo ng scientific method at ng experiment. So,
importante talaga yun.
Ito po, sa mga teachers po natin, papakiusap ko lang po sa inyo, maturo nyo lang po yung scientific method ng maayos at ma-relate nyo sa experiment, nagwagi na po kayo. Sobrang mas lumaki pa po yung ambag nyo sa bayan. Malaki na po yung ambag nyo sa bayan, pero mas ano po yun, mas aangat pa yun. Ayan. Okay. Alright. So, pakakawalan na po namin kayo.
Alauna na dito sa amin sa States.
Pwede po ba tayo mag-picture?
Okay.
Opo, doon po sa mga komportable magpakita po ng inyong mga magagandang muka, baka po pwede namin kayo maimbitahan. Ayan, habang hindi pa po kayo nagsisialisan. Ayan. Alam niyo po, yung isa po natin pwedeng gawin, since nakakatawa tong group na to ng mga guro, siguro po every 2 months, kami ni JP nila Mama Connie, magsischedule kami ng ganito, chikahan lang tayo. Yung kung anong tanong daw about
Kaya if
reading.
you have questions for us,
Opo. Tsaka, ang gusto po namin matanggal sa inyo is yung stigma na, ay, kasi po minsan ang tendency ng mga tao, ay, nag-aaral abroad, ang galing, ganyan, tas takot. Hindi po. Kami po ay saksakan rin na, ano, na para mga tao lang, normal na tao lang din po. Namimiloso po, chichismis, minsan po, ano, may mga sumpong rin. So, ayan. Friends lang po tayo dito. Alright.
Okay. I'm gonna take it like frame by frame.
Yes.
Okay. Just keep on smiling. 1, 2, 3, and
Ayan. So ano, ulit po, pag ngiti po sa second frame, ang babanggitin po natin ay proposal, hindi pangarap. Ayan.
1, 2, 3. I'm on the third one. 3.
Ayan.
sige, dapat nga tayo merong ano,
Kamustahan? Ayan.
science, kapihan sa
Yan,
science.
science copyhan or ano, research maritesan, ganyan.
Yeah.
Alauna na ng gabi dito.
Oh my God. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Mama Connie, thank you so much. Actually, yeah, magdi-dinner pa po ko after nito. Tapos, paghahanda na namin ni JP yung pong para bukas. But then again, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and we'll see you
Tomorrow.
in the morning.
Pasensya na po if
Salamat
we're invading your Sunday, but yeah.
Hindi, kasalanan rin nila, dami nilang tanong. Joke.
Joke.
Salamat po.
Sige po.
Yan po.
And see you tomorrow.
Nang gaslight.